Wait, I was muted. Hello and welcome to our game. It's myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Michael Verney. What a weekend of GAA it's been. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by OurGameRetro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. Sweet little Waterford jerseys like this. I'm sure there'll be lots of Waterford people watching today, and this is the kit you want. It is slick. And you have that Galway jersey there. Obviously, big weekend for Galway, beating Limerick in the league. Henry Shef laying down a marker. We've so much to talk about on the show. Ballygunner, Kilcoo, amazing finales, and so much more happened besides that. But first off, it's Valentine's Day. Michael Verney, what have you done for the special lady in your life, your fiancée?
Oh, jeez, you have to really put me on the spot there now. I can tell you that. I keep my cards fairly close to my chest now when it comes to affairs of the heart. So
it must be very romantic. So
either that or there's not too much planned or not too much to reveal. I have a couple of things in my back pocket. I'm usually not a last minute merchant. I accumulate things over time and then distribute them on the day, same as Christmas, because when you leave it too late, you end up paying over the odds and you usually end up buying absolute rubbish. So I got a few scratch cards last night and a card from Elaine, but it's not really a man's holiday, is it?
Not really. She got 2 scratch cards. She should be in the doghouse for that. I mean, that's a disgraceful present.
Yeah, to be honest with you now, I didn't expect much else. I didn't expect much else. Like everything, like birthdays, like Christmas, they really are. It's a woman's world we live in. I don't care. It's definitely favored towards them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't be too demanding on Valentine's Day. Sure, look, we'll see what arrives my way later on, but I'll be fairly understanding. Even if it's only a meal thrown up in front of me, I won't be too demanding.
Yeah. Well, the least is going for a meal or something like that, or going out or something like that is probably the least. So we have a spot here in Dunboyne, lovely little steakhouse that we're going later on. So but needless to say, it won't be acceptable for me to arrive empty-handed.
Well, you won't be paying for the dinner though, I suppose. She'll have to treat you.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
I definitely would. Get your comments in. They're already flying in here. What was your moment of the weekend? Well, actually, at some point later on in the show, we're going to talk about the hand pass, the way that's going in the GA, and if it needs to be clamped down a little bit more just to improve the spectacle somewhat. We want to talk about the fact that there wasn't the option to just pay at the gates in some, I suppose across the board over the weekend. I was in Thurles and the Ticketmaster situation, that crashed. You were in Burr as well. I think there was a problem up there. There's so much to talk about here, even red cards and everything. So keep the comments coming in. I'll just read out a few of them that have come in already. Joe Butler, a Kilkenny man, as we know from regularly commented on here. Well done to Ballygunner on Saturday. A great display of perseverance and fighting to the very finish. Hard luck, Ballyhale. You did yourselves proud. Also, incredible to think that a team would lose a top-class hurling match with 11 players scoring from play. Hard luck, Ballyhale. Flash says Ballyhale got a taste of their own medicine. I suppose if you're looking at it in terms of getting late goals to keep yourself in the championship against Rhinos and then St. Thomas's, definitely that would be the situation. Kieran Russell, what a weekend for Waterford hurling this weekend. Isaac Dolan, about you, Verney. He probably spent all the money to see Offaly get battered.
Lovely, yeah. Get battered. I'd probably spend, go through that comment again?
Well, he's basically saying that instead of spending money on your lady, and you're obviously looking to pick up gifts on the cheap, you spent all your money getting access to watch Offaly get battered.
I was actually doing parking steward for media and county board officials yesterday and left my post at around 5 to 2 and was then working at the match at 2 o'clock. So I literally was sitting down at my laptop as the ball was being thrown in. And yeah, unfortunately, not a good day, but a great crew in Brennan's Park. That ticketing problem is an issue though, Shane. I think
Ticketmaster, tell me your thoughts on it.
I think Ticketmaster went down worldwide yesterday. And like it's happened, I think it happened on the Ed Sheeran tickets. It happened the week before in Croke Park. I had a fella get on to me. He was going to see Trim playing Steelstown in the intermediate final. And they hadn't been able to get, they'd left it till, say, Saturday evening to get tickets. And then all of a sudden the ticket systems were down and there was a minibus landing to Croke Park without tickets. So, like, only thankfully for them and many others that the system was uploaded and got back moving again, they were able to get into Croke Park. But it's only a matter of time before people are left out of venues, are not able to get access to venues. And I just don't think this cashless system is fair, to be honest with you, particularly for older people. I was at a Burr match earlier on this year that I was involved in, And I had to say to a steward that I knew beforehand, listen, my mother and father will be coming here at 2:00. Can you just make sure and let them in? And I showed them the tickets on my phone because neither of them have a smartphone. And then, like, unless I'm at home or my sisters or something are at home and are able to get tickets, my mother and father wouldn't be able to go to a match. And they're only, like, just gone pension age. So what about people in their 80s or 90s trying to go to a game? I'd imagine it's a bit of a disaster. I can't understand how there's not even a pop-up on the day of a match where people can give a bit of cash. Or we were lucky yesterday that we had a tap and go machine where we were able to, allow people to tap, whether it's 15 or 30 euro for two people and let them in. But there'd be a lot of facilities that just wouldn't have that. We were very lucky yesterday. But I don't think it's fair, particularly on people who are, not savvy technologically, and I don't think it's fair on them, to be honest with you, particularly the older generation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to use a word like discrimination because that acts like there's bad faith on behalf of the GA with the ticketing and the county boards, or, in each situation, whoever is responsible. Because I don't think it is down to discrimination. I think it's probably trying to find the smoothest, most economical, efficient way to get money into their coffers. So I suppose if a huge amount of tickets are being paid for cash on the door and there's the kiosks set up, so obviously I went into Semple Stadium yesterday. I was in Croker on Saturday, but yesterday there's like that whole ticketing box there where there's a load of different windows where you can go and buy your tickets. And you know what? It's a nice little mixer for those people who are working there. So I think from their point of view, I suppose some of those people are a little bit kind of sad that they don't have that little earner. But I get it. If you're running a county board, you'd like all the money just going directly into one bank account. You never have to touch it. You never have to handle cash. You don't have to get somebody to take that money to the bank. There's all those little things, so it smooths the process a nice bit. But I do agree with you. Like my own parents as well, they'd be looking to get the tickets bought for them. Even setting up the Patreon for OurGame, patreon.com/OurGame. Thursday show is the only way to see it. Like my father handed me the phone yesterday and said, "Here, will you do that for me?" So I mean, there is that element. So I agree with you. And people out there, the comments are flying in here, and let us know what you think. Is it a case that there always has to be a kiosk? Because like, if it's a situation where there isn't that tap and go situation that you had, GA is losing out on a lot of money, or county boards are. And what do you do then? If you have 1,000 people outside who are thinking they could just walk up, or a load of people on the day, the ticketing system crashes, and you have a few thousand people who want to go, do you therefore say, look, we're just going to open up the gates and let people in because, it's unfair on people and we're not going to get the cash anyway, so we might as well just open the door and keep the good faith people? Like, is it a farce? Would you go as far as saying it's a bit of a farce? I mean, it's unfortunate to the county boards that Ticketmaster goes down. You don't expect that to happen.
But that will happen with technology, though, Shane. You do need to have a plan B. I think you always need to have people on the ground. As I said to you, I was feeling calls from people from Meath that the Trim were playing. They'd no one to contact. There was no, like, who do you contact in Crow Park? What are you supposed to do a couple hours before throwing? You can't get in for your club's, the biggest game of the biggest game in the club's existence probably, and you can't get in. Like, I wouldn't like that helpless feeling, or having to drive back to Trim or go somewhere to watch it on the box or something like that. And you had the potential of a load of kids who wanted to go and see their heroes not being able to go to the games. I take what Andrew is saying there, that you can go and buy in shops, but a lot of the time on the day of the match you actually can't. There's a time where it's kind of closed off. And like, when do a lot of people decide to go to games? When they see the weather on the day, or something's after freeing up, probably 4 or 5 hours before the game. I just think there needs to be a backup. There needs to probably always be something at the ground just to make sure that you're not denying anyone entry to a game. And just because technology is great, but when it breaks, and as you've seen with technology doing this program sometimes as well, when everything is going perfect, it's 100%. When everything is not, it creates a lot of problems.
Yeah, you need that fallback plan. I was actually on to trying to get some of the Ballygunner and Kilcoo lads to come on the show.
Good luck
today,
with that.
As you can imagine, most of them are wrote off. I won't name names, but one player, I won't even say from which team, said, well, Shane, only seeing this now, I was in the schools, currently have a pint of Guinness in front of me, can do it another day, no problem, with a few laughy faces.
He could do it with the pint of Guinness, that would be good as well now, but yeah, I don't think that's his number one priority at the moment.
And as well, are a lot of these people's partners suffering on Valentine's Day because of the rollover from the All-Ireland win?
Yeah, Jenny Mac. Yeah, I don't think a lot of partners would have been expected to spend their Valentine's Day in a pub in the middle of a load of lads, probably with their tops off and lads swinging t-shirts around and stuff like that. But sure, listen, that's the way it is.
Oh, stop. So where will we start? Is there anything else we want to touch on? Yeah, you actually wanted to throw this out about Limerick and winning the All-Ireland. You wanted to throw this out. We're going to come to it in a while, but just to throw it out to the viewers.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, I don't tend to overreact too much. And it's the first two games and they've been beaten. And I just wonder, Limerick were overwhelming favourites to win the All-Ireland this year and still are. But like, I'd love to get like a straw poll of the viewers even. Will Limerick still win the All-Ireland at this stage? Do people think they'll still win the All-Ireland? Or does it look like the chasing pack has, narrowed in a bit closer to them? And are there a lot of chinks of life for them? Just, it wouldn't even just a straw poll of the viewers just to see. Because like last year in the league was different. This year they've had the same time to prepare basically as every team. Are we seeing some potential chinks? And when an empire falls, does it fall suddenly like that, or is it more of a kind of a gradual process? But I'd like to get people's views on that.
Yeah, well, we'll get into it in a little while. I actually just wanted to look at their first couple of results from the league last year. I know that they didn't get to the
Drew a
league
tip
final.
the first last minute point, I think, to draw it.
Yeah, that was 20 points a piece. That was in May now, so obviously it's such a very different type of year. I don't know if that amounts to anything either in the positive or the negative side of things. But and then they lost by 26 points to 117 to Galway, and then obviously later in the year Galway weren't really in the conversation in terms of winning the All-Ireland. But yeah, people, get your comments in and let us know what you think of that. There's already
Waterford beat them as well. Similar to Galway the other night, they beat them 15-14 as well thereafter. But they finished the league really, really strong against Cork. I think they beat Westmeath and then they finished really strong against Cork. And it had kind of turned around pretty quickly. It'd be interesting to see if that happens. The Cork-Limerick game in 2 weeks' time takes on even greater significance as well. I think it always had significance from a Cork point of view because it was a chance to banish any demons. But now you've got Cork who are 2 from 2. You've got Limerick who are 0 for 2. Like, what would a win there potentially do for Cork? Banish demons and potentially put the dagger ever so slightly into the side of Limerick as well.
Yeah, I mean, last year, if I remember correctly, wasn't it? They were winning 10 points to 4, 10 points to 5 against Waterford. And then, wasn't it Seamus Flanagan got sent off that day and Waterford turned it around? But as we saw later on in the year, that didn't amount to a hill of beans because Limerick completely dismissed Waterford in that All-Ireland semi-final. And, we talked about a lot about Waterford trying the physical approach that day and it didn't work. But anyway, get your comments in. Let us know. Do you think that there is a sign here that Limerick might slip a little bit? Are other teams showing enough? Or will Keane Lynch come back and then all of a sudden Limerick are just very hard to tie down? But I think we should delay no longer and talk about what was.
How have we delayed to this point?
We've gotten 13 minutes in and we haven't really focused on the fact that Ballygunner are All-Ireland champions. 217 to 119 win over Ballyhale Shamrocks. I mean, what a moment for Harry Ruddle to score a goal like that. And you know what? I think the first thing we should do is break down the goal. Because you sent me a couple of images this morning and I got a couple of graphics going with it, just, to sort of sex it up a small bit. And we'll bring it up on screen here. You and I had both noticed this, but you sent me the images this morning. And the important thing is here, so you can see Harry Ruddle coming around. He's just approaching the 45 with Dara Corcoran in hot pursuit. There'd been a nice little move before that. Ian Kenny had worked the ball out to Paddy Levy. Paddy Levy did the old scoop that he loves to do to Peter Hogan. Hogan fed Ruddle and he was off to the races. So the thing that both you and I noticed here is you see the two circles there. So closest to the bottom of the screen is Kevin Mullen and Darren Mullen just above him. The two Ballyhale forwards that we have in the orange squares there are, bottom one is Kevin Mahoney and just above that's Desi Hutchinson. They both run out of the way. And even if you look at the two forwards on the right-hand side, they do something similarly. So I'll bring up just a second or so later. Look at where the two boys have gone on the left side, Kevin Mahoney and Desi Hutchinson, and look at the forwards on the right-hand side where they've gone. So if we just go back again, all those players are in a very tight little formation there, sort of I don't know if you want a little square in and around the D, meaning that any of them can receive possession outside of them. But all of a sudden they realise Ruddle is coming like a train here, so they part like the Red Sea and allow basically Ruddle that opportunity to shoot. So is there anything you wanted to add to that? Because I know I'm explaining it there, but this is something that you had also noted.
Well, when Ruddle is going through, there's potentially 9 players in the way of him and the goal. And all of a sudden, through the actions of his teammates, they've made sure that there's only 3 people in the way of the goal for the second image. I just think it's such a lesson for younger players in particular, but for anybody really, just about how powerful your actions can be without the ball. And particularly, like, Desi was being man-marked all day. So he knew, if I move out here, Darren Mullen's 100% going to follow me. I'm going to take him out of play. But the other forwards did the same as well. And look, it's not the cleanest passage to goal, but they've given him a chance. They've given him, like, throw another 4 or 5 bodies in there, and it makes the angle is just not there. It's probably likely to hit a back, or likely to hit a leg or a chest or a hurl or something like that. They've given him a great chance, and I just think it's so smart. The really good forwards, the really good players will, even when, like, players are great in possession. You know, how good are you when you don't have the ball? Can you impact the play when you don't have the ball? Another example would be, like, Colin Fennelly had his, 10 or 15% play in TJ Reid's goal in the semi-final, despite the fact that he didn't even hit the ball. Do you know what I mean?
We finish each other's sentences, Verney. That's where I want to go.
It's just really, I just think it's really, really smart. And it's a lesson for any player. When you're not in possession, you should be always thinking, what can I do? How can I help my teammate? How can I be of assistance? And the Ballygunner boys just parting, as you said, like the Red Sea there. They gave Harry Ruddle the opportunity, and by God, did he take it. I'm not messing. I was shaking for about half an hour after that game. It was just unbelievable to watch. I just had an inkling as the game was going on. They're just hanging in. And they gave themselves the chance to produce something like that. And then, like, it was perfect timing. It was like Derby in 82. There was no chance to react. It was over. The ball wasn't even hardly pucked out and the game was over. You couldn't win. As I put up on Twitter, what a way to win, like, and what a way to lose as well. You don't even get a chance to react. That was as dramatic a moment in Croke Park as I've seen in a long time, and exactly what club final day needed, because we haven't been blessed with really good club hurling finals in recent years, and by God did that deliver the other day.
Do you know, I was stunned when it went in. So I was in Croke Park, and I didn't even know how to react. I just got up on my feet, and I was just like that. I could not believe what I had just seen, because you don't see the fairy tale goals like that. Everyone said it since, but this is what you grow up dreaming of in the park. Oh, we're 2 points down last second of the game, and you call out your own name and you smack it past your little brother or whatever, and you're there giving it the big one. But, like, Harry Ruddle actually got to live out that dream. It's and as did Jerome Johnson in the Gaelic football. Like, it's absolutely incredible. Like, it really is.
Just on that as well, Shane, it's a lesson as well for any player. And you've been there and I've been there. You're not starting, you're not getting game time. You get the hump, particularly when you're younger. You allow a negativity to set in. You're not, maybe even if you do get a chance to come on, you don't take it that well. Whereas, like, Harry Ruddle was dropped for an intermediate championship game with Ballygunner last year. He obviously persevered. I think he started every county championship game this year with Ballygunner. Then didn't start again throughout Munster. Like, but he persevered. He kept believing that he could do something. I think he set up Desi actually for a lovely point before that with a lovely diagonal ball. It just shows you, like, it's not about the last ball or anything. It's just about what you can do with the next ball. And what he did with that ball is just phenomenal, really.
Yeah, the comments are lashing in here. Richard Hogan says that Richie Reid's position blocked Dean Mason's view. I mean, look, I think Mason was brilliant with his puck outs. He was brilliant with his distribution of the ball. I'd say he will be a little bit disappointed with how he tried to get across for that goal. I'm sure if it was at the other end of the field, given the save that Stephen O'Keefe had made from Colin Fennelly, and I know the ball was whipped into the net, I think it's a save that maybe the likes of Stephen O'Keefe would make. But it's not to be harsh on Dean Mason. And certainly for the other goal, the way Desi Hutchinson caught the ball, turned back and lashed it back across himself into the top corner. I don't think he had any hope with that one at all. But that one, I mean, you have to kind of call that out at the same time.
I think from Ruddle's point of view, and I'm sure he didn't plan it this way, but it couldn't have bounced in a worse spot for the keeper as well. Every keeper will tell you any shot like that. That's why we have such admiration for Stephen O'Keefe's save from Colin Fennelly, because it's so hard, bounced right underneath him and flies off the sod. And Mason was over and got over. It's not as if he was slow to get there. He was there. The ball just hopped at the perfect time for the attacking player and the worst time for the goalkeeper. And he was just very unlucky. And it crept right into the corner. It was so hard to believe when you were watching it. You just see the back. I think you can see a hurl kind of moving in the back of the net. And then all of a sudden it's a green flag and it's all over. And yeah, it's like heartbreaking from a Ballyhale point of view. Like Ballyhale essentially got Ballyhaled, didn't they, the other day?
Did.
That essentially it, like.
Yeah, well, Richard Hogan is asking us how close were we in terms of like how we were trying to predict the tactical breakdown the other day. I suppose it's not a million miles off. We do have Desi Hutchinson being marked by Desi Mullen or Darren Mullen. Like Desi Hutchinson scored 1-3 and gave an unbelievable performance. He also set up a few scores, but I'd still say that Darren Mullen had an excellent game. I think in many respects there's a lot of similarities to what happened here. Barry Coughlin and Colin Fennelly, everyone knew that would happen. But Tyke Foley was on TJ Reid. Philip Mahoney was the sweeper. Shane O'Sullivan had a great game wing back. A lot of the other stuff did happen, like Ian Kenny was on Owen Cody, and there's a comment here from Richard Hogan saying that Ian Kenny won his battle. He held him to 1 point, and actually Cody had to work unbelievably hard for that point. So you'd have to say Kenny gave a great performance there, and Barry Coughlin really grew into the game as it wore on. Yeah, I don't think we got it a million miles wrong, even though there are a couple of things here and there where you'd say, yeah, how did you even think that would happen? Oh, we just lost Michael there for a second. I'll go through a few more comments because plenty of them have flown in. Joe Butler says, the Darren Mullen versus Desi Hutchinson battle was enthralling with both players playing so well. It reminded me of James Donoghue versus Keith Higgins battle in the 2014 semi-final. That was the All-Ireland semi-final down in Limerick, if I believe. That was actually a brilliant one. Incredible how both finals ended in last-minute winning goals. Someday for the GAA. Isaac Dolan, as a game, it wasn't just a good final, but it will always be remembered for the goal and the karma for Ballygunner. Only thing I would say is that Richie Reid engages him sooner. Yeah, I mean, again, just to finally go to that image one more time. Actually, we'll start off here. Richie Reid is at the very bottom of the screen there, wearing number 31. He'd had a blood injury, so underneath where the two yellow circles are. And you'd think, oh, well, why isn't he out there to engage Harry Ruddle? Because he's too much space to run into. But there's a huge amount of traffic in front of him. And the one thing that Ballygunner are thinking at that stage is, we cannot concede a goal. So therefore, you can't really leave a one-on-one inside in the square. So I don't really have an issue with where Richie Reid is.
Yeah, from his point of view, you would have expected someone else to come sooner. Like there are two lads just to the left of him. You would be expecting one of them potentially to come sooner and force him to give a pass, and then maybe Richie could lean over to that side. So I definitely wouldn't be blaming him. And like he was my man in the match. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. He was outstanding, Richie Reid. I thought he was brilliant. That point he got in the second half was brilliant as well. Like you have to say, like Ballyhale were the better team after 15 minutes. I thought at one stage in the first half that Ballygunner could potentially run away with it, and then all of a sudden they were 6-5 up. I thought Evan Shefflin was brilliant as well at times. Thought he dominated that half back line. I thought him and Richie Reid are very good. There's a catch TJ made behind Paddy Levy, which is outrageous in the second half as well. I thought he was very good too. Speaking of catches, Barry Coughlin made a catch after about the 62nd minute when Colin Fennelly had totally forgotten about the ball and all he wanted was the ball to break through. And he was in on top of Coughlin, and Coughlin's hand goes up. You're talking about Ian Kenny there just before he got cut off. I thought Ian Kenny was brilliant. Like it was a classic case of a cornerback having a massive impact on the game. Like he won a lot of balls that were against the grain, and it was him that came out with that ball out to Paddy Levy. And you'd have to say to Paddy Levy as well. Like he took it to another level the other day, how low he was getting down, picking up the ball. The ball was ever so slightly off the ground a couple of times, and definitely for the last goal it was as well. He got through a mountain of work too. But yeah, as the lad says there, it's Harry Ruddle will forever go down in folklore. And if he never does anything again, he'll always be remembered for this. And from a Chase and Pack's point of view now, Ballygunner are obviously the kingpins. I would be worried for the next couple of years if you're, particularly in Waterford and anywhere else, they've gotten over the line. It wasn't, they mightn't have delivered their best performance in the final, but they're over the line. The pressure is totally off. There's nothing stopping them winning another couple of All-Irelands over the next couple of years. Absolutely nothing as well at all. Something else I'd like to say as well for Desi Hutchinson's goal. Ballygunner are known as a kind of a methodical enough kind of side, and they always give, a sympathetic ball into the forwards. But Philip Mahoney, I remember thinking when he hit it, I was like, this is just Ballygunner are at 6s and 7s here. He's just, lobbing a ball in. But I thought it was really clever looking back on it. He'd obviously scanned the pitch ever so slightly beforehand and seen that there was only 2-on-2 inside, and the Ballyhale half back line was well pushed up. He gave Desi a chance. It ended up 1-on-1 under the high ball, and he took it, and that really got them back into it when they needed a goal at that stage. I don't think they were going to clip over enough points to get back into the game. And I just thought that was really smart as well. And it's a lesson to people as well. The long ball is not dead. It's just knowing the right time to deliver the long ball. You don't deliver a long ball when the half back line is set and the full back line are well up on their men. You deliver a long ball when your opposition is pulled out and there's less bodies in there. And it just shows you as well, people say, Desi Hutchinson is not the strongest in the air. He's probably not, but it's one-on-one. When it's one-on-one with his man, you're giving him a fair chance.
Yeah, I think that was probably one situation where Darren Mullen, if he had it back again, he'd be more looking to let the ball through and spoil Desi and maybe just disrupt his hand. And that is kind of the dark arts of defending. But that's not to take away from Darren Mullen's performance. I thought he was quite good. His brother Patrick Mullen, I think, gave away too many frees. He gave away 3 scored ones.
He was influential, Shane, but there was a couple of rash moments when he lost possession and he just fouled in the next instance, and it was a bit of a killer, and it just kept them in it. When it looked like the Ballyhale could pull away, they just got a bit of hope. I have to say, Pádraig Matley didn't have his best day on the frees now either, probably, but there were a couple of moments where he won a couple of big frees when they needed him, and I thought he stood up, particularly in that third quarter when a lot of other guys were probably barely treading water.
Well, he scored a free from his own 50-yard line, heading towards the Hogan stand flank. And there were 2 points down at that stage, 116 to 118. And he scored that, and that gave them life. And then obviously there was the point just after for Evan Shefflin, where a long ball went up the field. I can't remember who had hit it, but 3 Ballygunner lads all end up going in up for the same high ball. I mean, there's tiredness. There's even just the occasion itself. I don't care if you've been there before or whatever. It does take a little bit of something out of you. I've never been as tired after a game as the All-Ireland. Even the second day, I only came on just before half-time, but I was never as tired at the end of a game, and that's down to the occasion. Maybe it's also down to the increased intensity at a game at that stage of a competition like the Piershig. That must be what it's like, pretty much close to playing against an inter-county team. So maybe that's part of it too. You're just playing up at a higher level. But I did want to pay particular attention to a score from Kevin Mahoney after 17 minutes. I put a little note beside it saying mesmerising. All that stick passing, and Ballygunner moved the ball forwards and back, and Kevin Mahoney was involved in it a couple of times. I remember watching it and I just kind of started laughing as I was watching it. I was like, this is absolutely unbelievable stuff. And he knocked it over for a finish. So I thought that was brilliant. I think Ballyhale, obviously, they had the title in their hands, and to lose it in that fashion, I think that adds to the sense of disbelief. A bit like Mark Keane scoring that winning goal against Kerry. You're like, okay, the team that most people expected to win are going to do it, and this team is used to winning it. They'll see it out. They know how to see out these games, and that just added to how stunned I was. Like before the game, you predicted Ballyhale, I predicted Ballygunner, but I said a puck of a ball. Who knew that when it comes down to saying a puck of a ball, it really meant one puck of a ball?
Yeah, that was literally it. Yeah, I can't recall enjoying a match and being as emotionally engrossed in a match as a long time. I was chatting a couple of lads in the pub there Saturday evening. It was literally the build up to the club final. To me, was the build up to an All Ireland senior hurling final. Like it was like the first Sunday in September. That's what it felt like the other day. And while the first half wouldn't have blown you away, I actually was looking at the first half and I was just thinking, like, this is what separates Ballyhale and Ballygunner. The work rate of the best players. How many times did TJ get in little flicks and get his body in? Colin Fennelly the same. That's what really separates the best teams. They're all hugely skillful and hugely fit, but they're just willing to really put their bodies on the line. They're willing to spoil. They're willing to do whatever it takes to deny the ball going into the opposition hands. And just an absolutely brilliant occasion, with the most Roy of the Rovers finish you will ever see. Harry Ruddle. How many points will be bought for Harry Ruddle over the next week, or since Saturday to Saturday? I'd love to know how many points will be bought for him, and then for the remainder of his life, God knows how many will be bought for him.
That man's biggest challenge will not be becoming an alcoholic after that, with the amount of drink that's going to be bought for him. A Sully 180. Verney was shaken because the Kilkenny team were done.
Well, listen, that's probably part and parcel of it too.
Desi's goal deflected off Joey's back on its way in, completely wrong-footed him. I did wonder, was there a little clip? Maybe there was, actually, Richard. I wasn't entirely sure, but maybe you're right on that one. Shocking defending. Reid should be coming out and burst the lad coming through. Keeper is terrible too. Very, very harsh there. I do think maybe he could have got to it, but I think that's a small bit harsh. Desi was drawing the defence away from Ruddle. Yeah, a lot of people agreeing on that point of view. Paddy Levy adapting the brick flick. I think he does his best stuff when he keeps it simple. A couple of stick passes. Well, he went for long balls in the second half and put them out over the end line. I think Paddy Levy's like unbelievable work rate, gets on the ball so much, wins so many rucks. And just when he plays it nice and simple, I think he's really, really good. That save from Fenley, yeah, we're mentioning that again. Ballygunner are like Burr Mick, win one and go win a few now.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. Yeah, I just think the age profile of them, like, there's definitely a good couple of years left in Philip Matney, Barry Coughlin, Pádraig Matt. Like, they're not going anywhere. And the younger generation coming through as well, like Mikey, Kevin Matney, Desi Hutchinson, these lads are only early to mid-20s. Like, so I don't see why not. I wonder will Ballyhale be able to regenerate now as well? I think that's going to be really interesting. Obviously, talk of James O'Connor stepping away, that's not really officially confirmed yet, as far as I can see from anywhere. But it's going to be interesting to see how they react to this now.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very tough on James O'Connor. He was over Father O'Neill's from Cork a couple of years ago when they lost to Tullaroan in the 2020 Intermediate All-Ireland, as Richard Hogan is pointing out there. Paul Newtape, is this the bounce Waterford need to win the All-Ireland in the next 1 to 3 years? Also, what Ballygunner did to Ballyhale with last second win, Ballyhale did that twice this season alone. And, you know, like Kilkenny teams have been doing that to teams for years, but we've seen in the last couple of years that, you know, Waterford turned it around in Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final a couple of years ago. Now maybe the pattern is changing somewhat. And I suppose for Waterford teams to be kicking on to the next level, and teams in general, I mean, we talked about there on Thursday that you have a Limerick team winning its first Club All-Ireland in 2016, a Dublin team in 2017, a Waterford team now in 2022. That maybe the idea of there's the traditional lines of where All-Irelands are going to go and who's going to dominate. Maybe all of these sort of victories combined, and even Limerick taking over the last couple of years, does all of this kind of help redraw the lines of where the domination has to be?
Oh, I think so as well. Like, even Borough winning the club title in '95, Offaly were after winning in '94, obviously. But that would, even the win in '94 for Offaly gave the Borough lads even more confidence going into '95, and then they were able to go on and win another one with Offaly and win another couple of Club All-Irelands as well. I don't think it should be played down at all. I think this is a massive bounce for Waterford. I think it has a huge bounce. They're obviously operating well in the league so far. You have Liam Cattle staying on, which is huge for their confidence too. You have, like, the Ballyhale lads or the Ballygunner lads will be bouncing back into training, bouncing back in, bringing that winning mentality. And as you say, beating another Kilkenny team that looked unbeatable to many. They obviously hockeyed a Limerick team along the way as well in a Munster final as well. And Limerick, even maybe it's just based on the first couple of games, but Limerick are starting to look a bit fallible now as well. So you're starting to think, like, there's a lot of things going right for Waterford. Taig de Burka back, which we'll go into as well. Pádraig Matney's going to be back on board as well. And I just think the confidence and the release that this will give, not alone the Ballygunner lads, but Waterford as a county. They hadn't gone up the Hogan stand steps since 1959. You know, that's an incredible amount of time. And these things tend to happen once the seal is opened. It can be very hard to reseal it again. So I think I definitely would be booming with optimism from a Waterford point of view if I was down there. And that's why, even though there's club rivalries and things like that, people have to see the bigger picture and see what this could potentially do for the county team over the next couple of years.
Joe Butler says, Michael Verney, incredible that you nearly predicted the correct score. You were only a point out but selected the wrong winners. Did you have a dream about the result?
No, I don't know. Sometimes you just get an idea in your head about what it might be. But we kind of both knew it was going to be really, really tight, and it was brilliant. It was just brilliant to see it all. Like, the football was turgid at times, but no one remembers that either as well because of the finale. And as you say there, Harry Ruddle and Jerome Johnson, absolute folk heroes in their neck of the woods for God knows how long.
Yeah, and Philip Mahoney said afterwards, it became an obsession without saying it openly, but each one of us individually put so much into it. The thoughts of going back to Ballygunner with the trophy tonight, it's just unbelievable, and you dream of it. I mean, they had been there so often, winning the Waterford 8 in a row before this season. This current crop had just won All-Ireland. Obviously, they'd won it in 2001 before that. You did sense that, and you wondered, was this going to pass them by? Like, Oulart ultimately got their Leinster Club Championship, but after that, they're now in a situation where they were relegated from the senior in Wexford. So you wondered, was this going to happen with Ballygunner? But the amount of underage titles they're winning, the fact that one of their best players apparently in training, I've heard in the past while, has been Pat Fitzgerald, who's too young to play yet, and he could end up being a star player to kick them on again next year. Will a few more of these players end up improving? I mean, there's a lot of scope for this Ballygunner team to continue improving. One thing that I did wonder now, so I was in Croke Park, and I did wonder, would this game, just in terms of being lost, the atmosphere being lost a little bit in this stadium, would this be better off somewhere slightly smaller? So I'm torn on this, because playing in Croke Park, I mean, it's brilliant and something you'll never forget. But at the same time, if it was in Semple Stadium, which can feel absolutely rammed when you have 5,000 people in there, like the noise can be raucous, I just kind of wondered, and I wonder what people think here. I haven't, I'm not pushing strongly to take it out of Croke Park or anything, but part of me thinks in some ways would it be better off being in a place like that where, there's 17,000 there at Croke Park, I believe. What would that have been like in Thurles? Would it, because it did at times kind of feel like a little bit dead in there, even though I was enjoying what I was seeing.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. You've played there. I thankfully played there a couple of times and in a club final, and big part of getting to an All-Ireland club final is getting to Croke Park, getting to play there. Not everybody gets to play there, so I think the honor that players get in actually doing that is huge. It's such a big carrot, like it really, really is such a big carrot for a player. I think even from a club's point of view and a spectator's point of view, making the trip up to Croke Park, like, so many counties don't get to do it. So many clubs don't get to do it. Whereas, with no disrespect to Semple Stadium whatsoever, there's a lot more, a Munster final, shall we say, is played there, a Munster club final, or an All-Ireland quarter final, maybe. Whereas Croke Park is Croke Park. Like, it's only the cream of the crop. It's the elite. There's so many people of the best players probably haven't got to play in Croke Park. And like probably 90-something% of club players will never get to play in Croke Park. So I get you on the atmosphere, but I think it's good. I think the players are the ones that are put first in it. Conditions are going to be perfect. There's not going to be any problems with logistical problems, anything. Everything will be down to a T. You don't have to worry about anything. And I think it's probably the prestige, I think, that it comes back to for me. But I get what you're coming at from a closed-in venue where even if there was only 5,000 there, it would be absolutely rocking, whereas potentially it is lost in Croke Park. But I don't think if you were one of the 17,000 in amongst a load of people, or you're the players, I wouldn't say it's lost on you.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the prestige is the big one there. Yeah, so, I mean, I definitely wouldn't be pushing for it, but there is part of me that does wonder a little bit, is it a small bit lost? And would it be that untraditional to have it in some... And it doesn't have to be Thurles, that's just an example of one. Adrian McGrath says, the job is not moving the club finals, it's promoting the matches so the crowds crowd grows. But actually, that's the other thing. If let's say, All-Ireland club final was in... Okay, we'll pick it, like... So... Clontarf, Dublin 3, the area where Croke Park is not a hurling heartland. There are clubs around it, but it's not like a hotbed of hurling. There's a lot of people around there who wouldn't know the boss from the heel. So let's say the game was on in Thurles, or it was on in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, or was on in Nolan Park, and pick a few other ones. It doesn't really matter where, but some place where hurling is big. Would you have a far more casual, kind of neutrals showing up and enjoying it? And would the 17,000, if it was down the country in one of those venues, would it have been 20, 25,000? And obviously that's just the hurling side. You might have to then put the football in another part of the country where neutrals might go, and which also suits the two teams that are contesting it.
I think there'd be a bit of a knock on, but I don't think it would be massive. I don't think a 17 is going to turn into a 30 or anything like that, or even a 25. You probably would get potentially maybe a couple of thousand more. But the problem, it's not a problem with the club game. It's just that, like, Ballygunner is dealing with, a certain part of Waterford City. Ballyhale is dealing with, what is it? Knocktoper, Ballyhale, and I always forget the third one. What's the third one again? Knockmoylan. So, like, that's a small enough area, and you will definitely get some Kilkenny people going supporting them. But realistically, you're not getting too many more from the other 30 counties. That's just the way it is. Where if it's County and Galway are playing a Tipperary, you're obviously you're multiplying the potential population by huge numbers, and also you're multiplying the star power, and a lot more casuals are going to come. So kind of that's just the nature of it with the club game. Like, I don't think you're going to get 50 or 60,000 at a club final. I just don't think that's the way. But I just have to come back to it again. The drama the other day was just absolutely unbelievable. And I just haven't seen it in so long.
Is Desi Hutchinson going to become the next superstar of hurling? Because talent-wise, he has it, and like, is he the missing link to Waterford winning All Ireland? He's been there for a couple of years, but like, the graph has been going like that in terms of like his form and what he can do. And all of a sudden, they still quietly have Stephen Bennett, a Hurler of the Year nominee, a little lad called Austin Gleeson, former Hurler of the Year and Young Hurler of the Year. I mean, in terms of like final pieces, are we even talking about final pieces here? Is that the way we're moving? Because I look at the Waterford team and I was like, ooh, Jack Fagan's been wing back lately. Like, he's a bit of a machine running forward with the ball. Tyke de Burke is back centre back. Caleb Lyons will be in at the other wing back, I presume, at some point pretty soon.
Conor Prunty.
Yeah, Irla Daly is there. They're not doing so bad. And Ian Kenny will go back pretty soon.
Jamie Barr in midfield.
Pádraig Mahoney. I mean, we might be getting to that point now where Desi is just the cream on top of it, or the cherry on top of the cream, that maybe Waterford can take it that next step. But then sometimes Limerick produce performance, and you're like, it doesn't matter who the opposition have.
That's the thing, you see, yeah. But like, Desi's graph is definitely on a massive upward curve. I thought it was interesting the other day. Darren Mullen had no interest in engaging with him and trying to push him away or anything like that. He was just trying to hold. They were literally, and I thought it was smart, they were just trying to limit the damage. And the goal was obviously a long ball that was sent in, but they were just trying to make Desi shoot from somewhat awkward angles and put him under a bit of pressure. But there was no one committing. He was not getting a chance to run at them or go at them or anything like that. But when you look at Waterford now, as you say, Stephen Bennett, Ozzy Gleeson, Jamie Byrne, like, they've so many places they can hurt you at county level. And with Waterford now, there will be lots of attention on Desi. But if there's too much on him, other lads will absolutely, go to town on you. So, yeah, I think things are starting to come together nicely in Waterford. And as I said earlier, just even Liam Cattle staying on must have been a massive boost to them. He obviously believes there's a better chance of winning Ireland with Waterford than Tipperary over the next couple of years. That's just, I would say, that's a fact of it, or he wouldn't still be there. And I can't imagine the confidence that has given the Waterford squad, and I can't imagine the bounce they're going to get off Ballygunner now as well. And
as we say in horse racing, they're starting to come to hand. Isn't that one of the terms?
Yeah, they're coming to hand, yeah, big time, yeah. They're showing plenty of toe.
Stephen Loftus says Waterford's problem is this group of players has coincided with Limerick's best generation. Well, the previous Waterford brilliant generation, the Maverick generation, as I like to call them, from the noughties, that coincided with Kilkenny's best generation. But at some stage, you're just going to have to say, well, we're going to overcome it. So, I mean, there's no easy way around it. You're going to have to beat Limerick to win an All-Ireland. And generally, like, there's the odd time an All-Ireland is won where maybe you haven't beaten the best teams along the way and it's kind of fallen for you a little bit. And I'm not, pointing fingers at any county there in particular, but like, they're going to have to do it the hard way, aren't they?
Oh, they are, 100%. They're going to have to play Limerick at least once, potentially 3 times to win All-Ireland.
And get through, like, Munster is way harder. It's harder than Leinster. I won't say way harder, but it's harder.
But potentially, so, like, unless it's a case of Tip in 2019 where Limerick are beaten for them, Waterford are just going to have to look after. They're going to have to look after their own business. And it's funny though, like, you want to beat Limerick at the right time almost as well in many ways, and not give them a chance. If they beat them in the group stages, they'll probably meet them again in the Munster final. If they beat them in the Munster final, they'll probably meet them again maybe in an All-Ireland final. Knockout game is when you really want to beat them, but I'd say they get a fair bit of confidence from even beating them in the group stages, or if they did beat them in a Munster final. Just on Waterford lastly, and I know we'll talk about them a bit later, I think they will be one of the teams that will really go after the league now as well. And I think Ballygunner winning the Club All-Ireland will even push them to, how much would a league title mean to them? You'd wonder with some teams, how much would it actually mean? To Limerick, would it mean that much? Probably not. To Waterford, I think it would mean a hell of a lot, because you're only competing for a certain amount of titles. They haven't won a national title since 2015. It gives them another bit of a spring going into the summer.
Yeah, Old Whelan, my club played in a junior All-Ireland just before COVID. We lost to Nagale. To see my club coming out in Croker was unreal and so special. I think that was Rathgarrow, Cushinstown a couple of years ago. Joe LK20, Waterford would need to go through the front door, Munster final, etc., to give them a chance of an All-Ireland over the next while. Waterford's best chance of an All-Ireland previously was 2007. And yeah, Adrian McGrath, like yourself, driving the boot into me saying, you mean like Tip Shane? Obviously, Tip 2019 didn't beat Limerick along the way. And Adrian, you know quite well I was more referencing Clare in 2013. But look,
I actually wasn't sure.
I
thought it was tongue in cheek. I thought you were referencing, Tip in 2019.
You think I saw the boot into my own county? Come on. Actually, do you know what? One thing, when you're talking about the league title, I was only thinking last night, with Limerick losing their first two games, and it's two groups of six, they have Cork, Galway, Wexford, Limerick, Clare, Offaly in their group. Having lost two games from two, there's a good chance of them not making the league final at this stage, which means it's pretty much open for anybody to get the confidence boost out of winning that competition. Cork haven't won it since, is it 1998 or 1999? Tipperary, for example, haven't won it since 2008. We know what would the likes of Kilkenny, Dublin, and like you said, Waterford. So I think that'd be huge. And even Galway, Wexford. Henry Sheffield won plenty of them as a Kilkenny player. I'm sure he'd like to give his team that boost and say, look, lads, we can kick on. We've lost, our generational player, Joe Canning. But look, straight away, you've the confidence to kick on and win a national title. There's only two national titles you can win, and you've done one of them.
Well, Limerick are going to need results to go their way. They're going to have to go through on 6 points and potentially go down to a head-to-head. And the fact that they've been beaten by Galway and Wexford, one of them at Barron Day draw will be on 6 points after the next day. And Limerick still have to go and win their 3 games. But you're right. What would it mean to Galway? Last time Galway won the league, they won the All-Ireland. Wexford haven't won a league since I cannot remember. I know they played in the 93 finals that went to a trilogy, I think, against Cork. I cannot recall the last time they won a league. Darragh Egan coming in his first year, that would be huge for them, especially going into Leinster. That's going to be an absolute shark pit. Waterford won it in 15, I think won in 07 as well. But they're shorn of national titles too. Dublin last won the league in 2011, and we saw the Leinster success that came 2 years on the back of that. So I think they're the teams that it would mean an awful lot to, and they should smell an opportunity now as well. Just to, as I said, you can only win a certain amount of titles. Go and try and win all of them you possibly can.
Yeah, Wexford last won the league in 1972-73, and since then they lost finals in 82. Well, I'm just going to say the latter year here. In 82, 83, the home final, which was 1990, I think. Then like you said, the trilogy in 1993 against Cork. So I think it'd be a huge one for them if they could win it. Let's see. Joe LK20 says Galway, Tip, Wexford, Cork, Dublin will concentrate the league because of the new managers. Come on, the Daisha, bring on the championship. Watford will overcome, as you said, they have to beat at least one phenomenal team. I wonder with Ballygunner destroying Kilmallock, could that give Watford a psychological advantage playing Limerick again? Not sure. Well, I wouldn't think so. I'd still think that Limerick are going to be unbelievably strong this year, but we are going to talk a little bit about whether there are any sort of frailties or weaknesses. Thomas Gallagher says 72-73 for Wexford in the league. Okay, so again, look, what a title for Ballygunner. And as Desi Hutchinson said, it's the best feeling in the world. The last few minutes, I thought it was gone from us. And Harry Ruddle came up with a moment of genius. We're All-Ireland champions. We just kept going and stuck the ball over the bar if it wasn't on. We didn't force goals, and thankfully Harry just popped up. It was unbelievable. Like Sean Moran got that level and goal in 2018 18. I remember saying to Kevin Downs, I don't think he's going to score this. And it does end up in a net. And, it's fantastic. But unbelievable. I mean, that is the biggest, as you said, Ryder Rovers finale we've ever seen to a club final, until maybe an hour and a half later when Jerome Johnson did it. But we'll talk about that football in a little while. The league over the weekend. So Wexford 220, Clare 120. So that's 2 wins on the spin for Dara Egan. And, I think we were all a little bit concerned about where the models were going to go this year after Dublin pasted them in the Walsh Cup final at Croke Park. And the reason I thought that would have been a bit of a blow is it's the first time that Dara Egan has taken his team out, to be a bit of a crowd there. People would have their eyes on and see how they get on first time at Croke Park. And they had the injuries. They had no Lee Chin, but then they didn't have him next week against Limerick and they still beat them. And now they come out in this game and then all of a sudden Rory O'Connor's playing full forward. And it's a bit like there's a bit of a Desi Hutchinson vibe out of the way that he plays at full forward. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, Jesus, bring back Kevin Foley, bring back Lee Chin, and all of a sudden we've got a team here.
Yeah, and Sean Murphy as well, and they've got a few options now. I think, as you say there, I think it's huge for them to get 2 big results, particularly the other day even, travelling to Ennis. Just a sort of fixture that, is a really, really tricky one, particularly after the euphoria the week before, and they back it up again. Just what I really loved in the highlights that I saw, and I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more of it, was the energy, particularly coming out of defence, how quickly things were done. When you see ball going through hand and even stick passes going down here, and it takes longer than it should. Matt O'Hanlon, when he got the ball, he was gone. He was head up and he was gone. Everything was happening so quickly, and you couldn't say that they had that sort of energy last year at different times. They definitely didn't have it in 2020. They looked really laboured. It was real kind of lateral play. I love to see that energy now yesterday, and even. It definitely looks like they're definitely not playing traditional style. There's not 3 lads inside or anything like that, but they definitely look like the full forward line, even if it's a 2-man full forward line, are playing much further up the field. And they're not horsing ball from their half back line in on top of McDonald with 3 or 4 lads around them. They're working it through the lines. And a couple of times yesterday, and I don't know, I'd say you probably have worked on this in training as well. It's just a little flick, 30 or 40 yards, just hopping in front of a lad, out to the side, particularly to a corner forward. And Rory O'Connor got a couple of them. He took a couple of lovely points when he got in that position, and he took on Paul Flanagan for the goal as well. And in fairness to him, a real good forward as well. Hit the shot, was blocked, but was ready, was ready to come again. Wasn't waiting to see what had happened. Was ready to come and flicked it in. He's that X factor and has been for a while. It's probably delivering a level of consistency over a whole season. We've seen glimpses. It's staying injury free as well, probably too. But we've seen glimpses of more than glimpses of what he can do. He is the sort of player that can take Wexford to another level. And interesting to see whether that role inside is his permanent kind of role, or whether they leave him out the field a bit more to play a more kind of Tony Kelly role where he could pick up 5 or 6 from play. But he was in devastating form yesterday.
Yeah, it could be a bit of a robbing Peter to pay Paul by having him inside, because everyone is playing sort of a running game now. And you talked about Matt O'Hanlon bringing the ball out, and he popped 1 or 2 of those lovely stick passes into the corner for Rory O'Connor. But you can imagine he'd love to be popping the ball to Rory O'Connor around the middle of the field so he could run and maybe pop to Diarmuid O'Keefe and Lee Moog McGovern and, keep that give and go stuff going that we're seeing from so many teams at the moment. But you can't beat having just somebody with that speed, that hurling inside who can kill you and get a goal at a moment's notice. Desi Hutchinson could be out of a game for, 55 minutes, but there could be 7 or 8 balls that go into him that give him 20, 30-second moments, and he could be winning the game for you. And I think Rory O'Connor could be somebody who does that too. I think free taking is something that's definitely going to have to be sorted for the summer, which it will be because Lee Chin will be back. Do you remember a couple of years ago, there was one championship where I think we counted 6 or 7 different people who had taken frees for Wexford at one stage. There was Jack O'Connor, Paul Morris, Lee Chin,
Seamus
Conor
Casey.
McDonald. Seamus, yeah. So you would have had all these different lads, but so that's why Lee Chin, who's become so good on them, obviously you'd love to have him back as soon as
you
possible.
won't win a title, Shane, without a 90% plus free taker. You just won't. And it's probably no more than Rory O'Connor being, delivering a real consistent level of brilliance. Your free taker has to be up in the 90%.
I think Mikey Dwyer is impressing a nice bit more and more. I think he's not a huge guy, but he's fairly dynamic and fast, and he's doing nice little stick passes around the place. He's got that bit of hurling. So he's definitely one that impressed me at times. John Conlon going back into the forwards for Clare, is that something that stood out to you? Because last year, when we were sort of wondering at the start of the year, will this work? I mean, it kind of worked. And now they're taking him back out of there, which is a bit odd. But is that partly down to the fact that they've injuries and they don't have Duggan and Tony Kelly and Shane O'Donnell still has concussion issues? Is it more down to that? Will he go back into centre-back? Because I'm not sure that Jack Brown would be my first choice for centre-back for Clare. I mean, he's definitely a very useful player, but I don't think that's the position I'd primarily put him in.
I think it's probably needs must at the moment. They're a bit shorn in attack. There's no points. They're definitely missing 4 starting attackers. You know, they played the league last year. Did both Tony Kelly, Shane O'Donnell, and Aidan McCarthy, all not necessarily in attack, but operating probably from maybe 8 up at different stages. They're all gone for the foreseeable. So I think he might have felt that he needed some sort of a focal point, as well as that. Outside of probably Cottle Malone. Mark Rogers, very good player, probably more diminutive. Shane Meehan the same. They probably do need somebody, a big ball winner up there, somebody that can hold the ball up in there, somebody that can do maybe a lot of donkey work for, you know, maybe the smaller forwards as well. And Conlon's definitely capable of doing that. But it's just, yeah, you wonder the conversations that are happening behind the scenes. Has he told them already that we're going to look at you as an attacker now because we're, you know, missing attackers and we're going to look at you an attacker for the season? I wonder, has Brian Cody has the same conversation with Pádraig Walsh, or is that just a case of when the Ballyhale lads are back, you're going to go back to defence? And you'd have to wonder if the same question of John Conlon, when those lads come back, will he be brought back to defence? For a crucial position like centre-back, you wouldn't think that he'd be moved out of there just for a couple of games. So you would probably be surprised if he's put back centre-back. But saying that, we were surprised last year when he wasn't put back centre-forward or full forward or wing forward from centre-back. So I'm not sure. It'd just be interesting to know the conversations that are happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, Patrick Hickey says, Clare have no game plan, hitting hope, Stone Age hurling. Watch Tip and Clare recently. It's looking good for Cork to get out of Munster. Clare lacks size up front. But Patrick Crotty impressed me when he came in. He won a few balls. He looks to have the hurling. I think he got on the score sheet. Yeah, he got a couple of points. I think he's a player. Like, sometimes you see a young player coming in and he's relatively slight. And, you know, even the socks up sometimes can make you look even more slight when you're a young player. You know, look a little bit fallow. And then he goes and wins ball and he's got nice hurling. So he's somebody that's impressed me. And Mark Rogers, his Scariff clubmate, I mean, 12 points there. Just one from play this time. But he's playing well. He's playing well at Fitzgibbon level also. Tony Kelly, though, he does hope to be back soon. Now he's missed. I think it was 17 weeks ago that he got his surgery. Ballier went and won that county title without him in the latter stages. Was it the semi-final and final? He didn't play, and certainly not the final. But he was saying that he hopes to be back for the Limerick game and the Galway game, and he was talking about reconstruction on the inside and the outside of the ankle, replacing ligaments. And it first flared up in the 2020 championship. I'm not sure, was it that time that he went over in his ankle before the Watford game, or had it happened even before that again? But if he comes back and hits the ground running, like, they're certainly going to need that, because the way things are at the moment, you wouldn't be kind of pushing for Clare to get out of Munster if they keep this up.
Not at the moment, but we're probably saying the same this time last year when they had a full deck to choose from after Antrim beat them, and I think Wexford beat them the next week then as well, or maybe it was the week after, I can't remember. But like, he will lift the whole thing something shocking, and it just means that more focus on him will also allow others to kind of contribute a bit more too. And he's obviously going to tip away, and he'll probably tip over his frees and a couple from play, and it just takes a bit of pressure off Mark Rogers, Shane Meehan. If you have Conlon back up in the forward line there as well, it maybe loosens him up a bit, maybe to be a bit more of a wrecking machine at the edge of the square. But it's good to hear that he's back, and with the fact that he hasn't said I'll be back in a few weeks or whatever, the fact that he's actually said games that he hopes to take part in is hugely encouraging from a Clare point of view. I think mid-table for them in the league will be fine. They're without a win at the moment. I think they're going to play Offaly and Tullamore the next day, and then they haven't played Leisure Antrim, so, and they probably haven't played Kilkenny either. But they'll definitely end up around mid-table. And I think that'll be fine. And I think it's just a matter of whenever Peter Duggan is back fit, whenever Shane O'Donnell is back fit, don't know if Aidan McCarthy's going to be back fit, just to get a bit of game time and then before championship. And then looked like, listen, nobody predicted that they'd run wreck on Waterford in last year's Munster Championship, and they did. So there's nothing, I wouldn't put it beyond them producing a couple of big results in Munster again this year.
Yeah, sure. Everyone thought that maybe Clare were in for a bad season when they lost Antrim, so nobody's going to get too freaked out about the league. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off any of the jerseys on the website there. There's just a small snapshot of the different jerseys they have, so go and check it out, and the promo code OurGame will give you 15% off. What about Limerick? There's an interesting comment in here from Flash, actually, a Limerick man. I'll just go and find the comment because it kind of puts a bit of context on things. And he says, just check the table there. And Jesus Christ, Limerick have scored less in 2 games so far than Offaly. Hopefully training next week and the break does its good. So, that's the idea of that, is not to drive the boot into Offaly, of course. But Offaly,
no, you're paying us a compliment, Shane. I'm delighted with that.
Yeah, but Offaly have lost their 2 games by a combined 36 points. They've been really hefty beatings. Limerick scored 11 points the first day out against Wexford and 118 here. Now, 118 isn't a bad score, especially in February, but they conceded 27 points. Still, we already talked about their league game last year against Galway. Galway won by 6 points, and it didn't amount to a hill of beans at the end of it. So, still, you do have to pay attention when the dominant All-Ireland champions are coming up a little bit short in the first couple of weeks of the league.
I don't think you can just write it off as the league or they're back training later. We don't necessarily know that they're back training much later than anyone else. And they looked like they'd hit the ground running in the Munster League as well when they walloped Kerry and then walloped Clare in the final as well. It's different than last year's league. The 2021 league took place, well, it was around May or that, but Limerick had won the All-Ireland 13 days before Christmas of 2020. They didn't really go back training till March, April, gave a prolonged break, and they were definitely well behind the curve and well behind the others as regards getting back training. This year, I don't think you could say the same. I don't know. I definitely wouldn't overreact, but there's definitely plenty of crumbs of comfort for the chasing pack. That, I'll put it this way, Will O'Donoghue had to go off injured the other day. I think, to me, when someone like him is off the field, he's just huge because he gets through so much work and sets the tone physically. Cian Lynch is to come back, obviously, as well. But Limerick are only an injury or two or a suspension or two from, being in a bit of trouble with Peter Casey missing as well. And as we've seen maybe in recent weeks, the depth of their squad, it can be easy to say, oh, look at the depth of their squad, look how strong they are. Maybe it's not as strong as you would think. And they've been quite lucky with injuries, I would say, in recent years. Casey's injury came when the All-Ireland final was over. So an injury or two, one of their bigger players, particularly I would say from 8 upwards, and that could cause a lot of headaches.
Yeah, Barry Nash has been really good and is a guaranteed starter in this team. And actually, I was thinking about it more. His naming at centre-back the other day, to me, they've basically played with 2 men spare back. And, a lot of this is because the opposition give Limerick a spare man. So I'm not saying that, Limerick are like the new Tyrone from a few years ago when, Mickey Hart had double sweepers either side of the D. But Nash was also generally a free man. He wasn't always man-marking someone. He was always the available guy to carry out the puck out. And, Declan Hannon was pretty free as well a lot of the time. So I think he's playing probably a similar role, but he was just moved to a slightly different part of the defence. So I was not surprised that he kind of, was moved out there. I don't think it would be a big deal to him. But then if you're looking at that team and William O'Donoghue has gone after 6 minutes, and you already don't have Cian Lynch, and Declan Hannon isn't there also, and then Peter Casey isn't there, you are down a nice bit. So, I think we can't ignore that. So, the idea that Limerick would be all that kind of susceptible this year, I wouldn't be buying it just yet. But will I go through a couple more of the comments?
Dude, just one thing I'd say is you can't write it off either, as you say. It is unusual. Apart from it hadn't happened really until last year, so it is a bit unusual. So, listen, I'm sure they're going to. I'm sure they'll come with a run over the next 3 games, but it should be some sort of comfort for the chasing pack.
Yeah. So Joe Butler, Limerick are just missing their conductor in Cian Lynch. He links up everything. Sherp 2U1. Limerick don't have the underage talent coming through like the traditional teams, in my opinion. Well, Colin Coughlin, Cathal O'Neill, who was excellent the other night, Adam English, I think they do have plenty of talent coming through. John O'Sullivan, I thought Cathal O'Neill was very good, and a couple of people have said that, of course. And is this the lack of quarters affecting Limerick already? Canucks whiteboard, water break and stuff like that. I can't rule it out. I think there probably is a little bit of something to do with that.
I would have nearly laughed at that last week. Then you see it kind of 2 weeks in a row, and you wonder, is there a bit of credence to it? And it's going to be interesting to see. They're probably trying to find a way around it, and that might be something that, you know, they're going to have to, I don't know what they're going to do, or who the, sure, the mayor commands, Mayor Ishkas can't be anybody on the extended panel or anyone to do with the management team, official backroom team personnel. So I'm not sure how exactly they're going to get around it. I'm sure they will, but it's not as ridiculous anyway as I thought it was a couple of weeks ago when someone said it, particularly after the Wexford game.
Yeah, Jack Harnett says Limerick will win by more this year. So, you know, I mean, not everyone is going along with that narrative. Richard Hogan says Galway brought huge intensity on Saturday night. Should probably compare to Limerick League or Kilkenny League form from 2009, 10, 11, 12, which would be an interesting comparison. Kilkenny were generally winning a lot of those league titles, weren't they?
Definitely won the league in 9, beating Tip in that belter in Thurles. Yeah.
I actually have it here. So Kilkenny, they got to the they won it in 05-06, got to the final in 7, won it in 9, like you were saying there, got to the final in 11, won it in 12, 13, 14, 18, 19. So they have a nice history and shared it with Galway.
The only thing I'd say about that is as well, the 11, like there were definitely signs maybe of, like in 11 they were hammered by Dublin. Remember John Dawson?
They were missing so many players that day.
Okay, yeah, but there were even a couple of years after that. Didn't Clare give them a right clipping in a semi-final of a league one year?
Was that the day Shane O'Donnell went to town?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but so yeah, I don't know. Cody definitely still placed a massive emphasis on the league, and I'm sure Kylie does as well. But they haven't produced it in the 2 games so far.
Yeah. What do you make of the Groat Hegarty red card and the reaction to it? I do believe it was a red card. I do think that Limerick have red cards coming their way. They've gotten away with a couple of them. But like, it's not like I'm on a witch hunt for them. It's just like, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of red cards you've gotten away with. Aaron Gillan in the Munster final last year being a perfect example. By the way, what a brilliant catch for that early goal.
Savage, yeah.
And I did think Dahi Burke, of all players, getting himself caught in front. You do not let Aaron Gillan in behind you under a high ball. Easy say that from here. I know that it's not like I'm marking Aaron Gillan. No doubt he'd be snapping ball over me too, not to mention most other defenders in Ireland. But, I mean, you can't get caught in front. And then also his little chop up from the ground when he knocked over a point in the second half was glorious. But yeah, that red card, I think they have 1 or 2 red cards coming, and it's something they'll have to keep an eye on.
It's kind of a double jolt almost into him. And the question I'd ask then is, there's probably 2 questions. Is he a marked man from a referee's point of view, and will they be keeping an even closer eye on him, or are they already keeping it close? Like, there's a couple of players down through the years. Remember, there was a massive eye being kept on DJ Steps for a while. Remember DJ? Yeah, like that was, I'm not saying it was an edict to referees.
Dan McCormick isn't getting frees anymore for the arm around the neck. That's definitely stopped.
Yeah, I noticed that the other day actually as well. So there are a couple of things that are definitely discussed amongst referees, I would say. Hegarty will have a close eye on him now. Then I'm wondering, is he a marked man from an opposition point of view, in the sense of, you know, will opposition teams try to rile him up now? Will they think that if they get him excited that, you know, he'll be loose with a hurl or something like that?
Like I love Connolly, the way teams targeted Diarmuid Connolly to see if they could get him going.
I don't know if it's necessarily targeting, but it's just, you know, there's some players.
What else is it?
Yeah, no, but there's some players that you don't shoulder into because you know you're riling them up and they'll only end up doing damage to you. There's other players that you kind of give them a bit of extra attention, and you know there's a potential that they could go over the edge. I love the boys on TG Carter. They always use the word, when a free is given away, they always use the word squealcha for loose. Loose is such a great, like, one for all term for anything that happens. That was a bit loose. But he is a bit loose with his hurl and has been over the years. I was a bit surprised to see the reaction of people seem so delighted almost. The people I was reading on Twitter that he eventually got his comeuppance. There have probably been a couple of incidents down through the years. That's probably coming. I don't necessarily think it's a bad time for it to come. You'd rather, from a Limerick point of view and John Kiley and Gerard Hegarty's point of view, for that to happen in a league game. You know maybe that you've been looked at a small bit differently and you need to adapt your game a small bit. That's not to say he needs to lose his intensity, far from it, because that's That's one of the special things he brings to the game. But he might just need to be a bit cuter. He might need to realise that when the temperatures go high and I have a couple of lads run into me looking for me to react, that I just need to take a couple of breaths and maybe even walk away.
It's hard to. Oh, definitely hard, especially against certain teams and certain characters. Trump Spieler says everyone love to have Hegarty in their team. He's got a bit of the devil in him. Opposition hate him. His own fans love him. 'Twas ever thus. Reminds me of Colin Lynch or Johnny Lahey, like that. Yeah, I think he's like. Look, we both think he's an absolutely brilliant.
He's a freak as well. He's an absolute freak of nature. To be able to move the way he does for the size that he is, he's an absolute physical freak.
Yeah. What of Galway though? Because the question was, where would they be going this year? And I have a couple of friends from Galway, and they're fairly down in the mouth about the chances of Galway this year. But my answer is always any forward line that has Cathal Mannion, Conor Whelan, Brian Kincannon, and I know we name check Evan Nyland, even though it's not like he started too many of massive games at this point. But they do have talent, they have size. Even Joseph Cooney adds into that. Grode McInerney, Porrick Mannion is a very physical player. Fintan Burke has legs like Roberto Carlos. I mean, and some man for the sidelines too. Is he now the number one sideline king around?
He's not far off it, is he? No. Ozzy wouldn't be too far behind him. I said to you off air, I just don't like the side he takes the sidelines off for some reason. I just don't think aesthetically it looks as well as if he took it on his right hand side, shall we say? But like they just sail, like they were sailing over the other night. I don't know. I don't think Henry's going to mess around now. I think he has his half back line for the championship, and I think he has his full back for the championship, and I think those four are guaranteed. Dottie Burke will be full back. Porrick Mannion, who looks like he has the bit between his teeth big time again. Grode Mac centre back and Fintan Burke wing back. I don't think to be any messing with bringing Dottie Burke out or switching him in or playing Fintan Burke a full back. Unless someone gets injured in a big game, I think those four will definitely be there. And the 2 and 4, they were both taken off the other night as well. So they probably need to solidify who are in the two corners, but I definitely think they found 4 of their 6 defenders anyway. And interestingly, again, outside of Fintan Burke, it's the old faces, like not old necessarily, but it's the older guard. And I thought it was really the older guard that were outstanding the other night. Throw Joseph Cooney into it as well. Throw Conor Cooney into it too. Thought they were absolutely outstanding. They do look like they've gotten a bit of energy from Henry coming in. And again, like you don't know the conversations that are going on behind the scenes, but it definitely looks like the Thomas's boys. That it's 3 weeks since they were beating the All Ireland semi-final. Fintan Burke back in flying, Conor Cooney back in flying, David Burke back in. I'd love to know the conversations. Was that the Thomas's boys going to Henry and saying, we want to get back in, want to get back on the horse? Or was that Henry with an arm around the shoulder saying, we need you back in to drive on, we're playing Limerick or whatever? But everyone, that'll be a happy camp going in this for the next couple of weeks after that anyway. And I didn't expect them to win the other day. And a lot of what I saw from them was maybe beyond what I thought we'd see from Galway at this stage. Now, the only other thing as well, it was 15 against 14. As Henry said after, the result was there for them, given the circumstances. And in fairness, they didn't shy away from it and took it by the scruff of the neck and won it.
Yeah, I think in terms of like building up a bit of siege mentality, Limerick can do that now, because you can see the conversation about them throwing the ball, instead of hand passing it. That's coming up more and more. The commentary around, some of the dirty flakes, even just the fact that people just get sick of the same team winning. That happens. But I still think they're going to be very, very hard to stop this year. But we should talk about the hand passing, and we'll come to some of the other games in a while. But I do think that, even though I'm not necessarily feeling that Limerick do foul the ball all that often, I'd say it does happen now and again. But I do think that the return of the definite striking action is something we need to see, in terms of like the ball coming up visibly off the hand before you strike it with your hand, which is what you're supposed to do. Now it's almost imperceptible, and it's, for all intents and purposes, and I did this myself, it kind of is a throw. You are making that action, and it's coming loose in your hand, and you're then sort of smacking it. But I think because you're able to move the ball so quickly by doing that, it's making the hand passing game easier to do, and it means that there'll be more of it, because it allows you to keep possession securely with your team rather than blasting it up the field for a 50-50 ball. But that if that was policed a bit more stringently, I think teams would, like it is harder to throw it up and smack it away. I think teams would do less of it, especially in tight areas. It would make it quite difficult. and then that would lead to more balls being just tanked up the field into 50-50. Because I have to say, like, we'll come to it more, but like Kilkenny and Tipperary was a horrendous game to watch for an awful lot of it. And I think a lot of the other games, the quality of entertainment, if we can be selfish and as viewers say, we'd like to see more entertainment, just putting a real focus on the definite striking action and saying to teams, making it really public, we need to see that action or it's going to be blowing every time. It'll be a pain for a few weeks as these games are kind of reffed in a very fussy manner, but it might help. And what do people think?
Oh, 100%. It would be a pain for a couple of weeks. No more than, the time there was 50 frees with was it Dublin and Wexford and Croke Park a couple of years ago. But it probably did help a little bit as the year went on. If it doesn't look like there's been an edict coming down from referees to clamp down on it. It definitely hasn't, because I was in Bury yesterday watching Cork and Offaly, and Cork are as big a culprits as Limerick. I'd say there's probably just more focus on Limerick because they're champions. Yeah. Like they do it like an awful lot, a hell of a lot, and it's so quick. And listen, maybe the ball is ever so slightly leaving the hand, but if you can't see it, it's a throw really then for all intents and purposes. But it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. If they were going to implement stricter policing of it, it would have happened for the league, and it definitely doesn't look like it's happening in this year's league. So I don't imagine it's something that's going to be police a lot stricter in the championship if they haven't done it in the league. But people are definitely calling for it a bit more. And they are essentially throwing the ball basically.
Flash here says Limerick versus the world. They all patronised us when we came up short against Kilkenny in 2014, and now they all hate us. Flash, that is life at the top. If you're going to be a winner and a dominant winner, you can expect people to be coming for you. That is the nature of it. And in fact, what you should nearly do is just enjoy the begrudgery, because a lot of it comes down to that too. But like, teams are going to look for ways to, to crib at you, to sort of maybe get referees to focus on you. That's just life. You just have to accept it. Cork and Limerick make no attempt to hand pass. Other teams starting to do it as well. Paul Newtape, I could see Galway beating Limerick in the championship, and then I could see Waterford beating Galway. Galway have the physique to match them. On the Thomas's lads, they would want to get back in just to get rid of the memory of that defeat. Wouldn't be surprised to see Owen Cody playing Fitz during the week. Need to get it out of the system. Refs are watching Limerick more closely now. The throwing passes, the overcarrying is another thing. They got away with it the last 3 or 4 years. Steps and hand pass come up all the time the last few years. The game has gone so fast. Off topic, any chance of the GA backtracking on the cashless ticketing situation? GA really needs to do their best to alienate people, or really they are doing their best. Presume the reason is that they want to save on banking fees, not handling cash. Not entirely sure, but I suppose we speculated about that already.
It's very transparent as well. An online ticketing system is so transparent. 2,500 people bought tickets online. That's what came in. 2,500 by 15 or whatever it is. That's the takings for today. Whereas it's probably less transparent when there's cash, or maybe some people are getting in for, reduced rate, or you just don't know. It's very, very transparent, but I don't see them backtracking. The GA haven't backtracked on too many things down through the years. It's not really the kind that wants to make a decision. I just think I think for a Division 1 league game, like, you need a pop-up. You need a pop-up place where people can go and pay cash, or get another means of getting a ticket in case there's a bit of a disaster like there was yesterday. And it's just, you could have 1,000 people land into a game without tickets, and then what do you do all of a sudden? Whereas at least if you have somewhere for them to go, you have some way of solving the problem.
Yeah. Cork 425, Offaly 115. That was the final game in that Division 1 group. That was in Burr, the home of hurling in Offaly, as far as you're concerned.
The home of hurling, full stop. First All-Ireland final played in Burr in 1888. First All-Ireland club final played there in 71. The last venue outside of Croke Park or Thurles to host an All-Ireland club final. 10 All-Ireland senior hurling semi-finals played there. The last of which was 1974. Christy Ring, Laurie Marr, Mick Mackey, you name them, they've played there.
And and despite all that, I'm sure you wish that Cork didn't come to Bury yesterday and it was on in Tullamore.
No. It was good to have, just even for the spin-off of the business around town. It was great to have him there. And I'd always say that when Offaly play, and if the games are in Burr, you are guaranteed probably 600 to 800 more people minimum been at the game. That's just a fact. If you look back at attendances for the last God knows how long, it was over 3,000 there yesterday. You would have had would have had max 2 in O'Connor Park yesterday. That's just a fact. But Cork actually stayed up the night before, and any chance of them getting out of blocks slowly was taken away, like within the first 3 minutes. Was it Shane Kingston went through for a goal, Dara Fitzgibbon went through for a goal, Robbie O'Flynn had a goal disallowed for overcarrying a minute later. Like that was all within 4 minutes. Offaly kind of
like did Offaly go man to man? Was there a spare man back?
No, far from it. Offaly hardly played with a forward for the first 10 or 15 minutes. Actually played with a sweeper back the pitch, but I don't think it's something that they're too familiar with. And to me, it looked like something that had maybe only been practiced during the week. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but it definitely didn't look like something we were comfortable with. And we were trying to play a kind of sharp ball out at the start of the game, and a couple of them were overturned. Cork got one of their goals definitely from a ball that we had in possession from the keeper, and then it was overturned about 30 or 40 yards out the pitch. The one, and I thought it was peculiar, because if you're to say where's one of Cork's weakest points, I would say in the air is one of their weaker points. So I'm not sure why we didn't play longer puckouts or longer ball down on top of the half forward, and at least have the 3 half forwards there. If you only have one inside, you only have one inside. But the game was over after 12 minutes. I think it was 3-7 to 2 points after 12 minutes, and like that is literally like all she wrote. Fairness to Cork, went for the throw from the start, were very, very keen on goals. But do you learn much about Cork really from this sort of a test? Like, was it much of a test? Not really.
Did it kind of follow the lines even of what we expected? Like on the Thursday show, Thursday is Patreon only, patreon.com/OurGame, $5 a month. Like we did say that Cork are the sort of team that will be able to cut open a team that's a little bit kind of weaker or whatever. So that did happen. Now I want to read out a couple of the comments here, and then I want to ask you a question about Cork. Tig J. Fanning says, Cork has a serious amount of firepower up front now, possibly the most in the country. I think Cork need their 6 should sit in the centre-back position. Coleman should be in midfield. Joyce at 6 maybe. I hope that, let's see, Cork have... Cork way too dodgy at the back. Talent-wise, we're not too far off. Cork have speed in the half-back line that can blitz team, but defending might be questionable. Needs to be addressed. So the question I want to ask you is about Conor Lehane. So he's back in this year. He had obviously been left off the panel last year. And the thing that I had always kind of wondered about him is, does he too much think about getting his own score? And if he was more kind of bringing people into the game, might he be that more of a sort of a lethal weapon up front? And the thing that stood out when I was watching the highlights is he set up a couple of early goal chances. He set up...
Kingston.
He set up Kingston, and he set up the second goal as well. I just can't remember. But he set up 2 goal chances early on, where normally I think Lehane would turn and go himself here, and it's just kind of pin the ears back, head down, tunnel vision. I'm going for my own score. Now he's talent-wise, he's up there with pretty much anything that's out there. But if this is a guy now who's all of a sudden going to be like that, they've had a conversation with him, Kieran Kingston, and they're saying, look, we're bringing you back in, but we want you to play slightly differently. He played close to goal from what I saw. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So we're going to play close to goal. And again, I make the Desi Hutchinson reference, or even, I suppose, Aaron Gallan or whatever, lads that play inside. We're going to play you as that speed merchant inside who'll come out, win the ball, take your score, obviously, when it's on, but also feed lads coming through. I'm thinking, wow, like with Lehane there, if he does embrace that role and kicks on to another level, and then if Mark Keane can add something in that forward line, we might have a new look Cork forward line that's even more dangerous than last year. So can you give me your thoughts on Lehane, and also how did Mark Keane go when he was both full forward and half forward?
Yeah, Lehane was close to goal at times, but did drift out at other times as well. I think he went inside when Mark Keane came out to the half line. It was actually really noticeable for the goal that he laid it on for Kingston. And I don't think that's a conversation even with Conor Lehane necessarily. That's just like, even last year, Cork were not, I don't think they were allowed, per se, to take on those long shots, those lower percentage shots. I think they were happier to create 3 goal chances rather than taking 7 shots from out the pitch, if you know what I mean. I think they think that if they're going to win All-Irelands, that they need to be hitting the back of the net. And like, he was definitely doing that yesterday. He was orchestrating. He took a couple of lovely scores himself, when they came his way. But he also was playing on ball for other lads wherever he could. He came in on a rebound as well. A Mark Keane shot for the third goal, followed it in lovely for a rebound. Mark Keane is definitely a lot rawer than the other Cork forwards at the moment, I would say. He's definitely probably not as natural, maybe not as risky as a lot of the other Cork forwards.
And played centre-back for his club. That's
Yeah.
the main hurling he's gotten recently, hasn't been in the forward line.
Yeah, when he went out wing forward, he did win. Definitely, I remember him winning one puck out anyway, in fairness. And I think that's more of his role, to be honest with you. And I think that the hardship role, in a sense, because Kieran Kingston was saying after, like, all he demands of players is put in a shift, and he said he'd have to chat to some lads who he didn't feel had put in a shift. But like, then we know how good they are on the ball. We know how risky they are. We know that they put the ball in the eye, through the eye of a needle from whatever distance out. But are they really going to get stuck in? Some of them, in particular, in the forward line, and I think he can definitely add an awful lot more there. But there is still plenty of rawness there, and he needs game time. He needs an awful lot of game time, I would say, to if he wants to hone that over the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, Traumspieler says Lahan was wing forward the first day out against Clare, didn't get on much ball. A penny for Pat Horgan's thoughts. Seems Cork mad to find his replacement. Enjoy Hoggy while you can, lads. That's another thing we speculated about on Thursday, about whether it's a foregone conclusion that he will start this year. So with that in mind, when you watched the game in Burr, were you thinking did it kind of add to the suspicion that maybe that he'll find himself out of the team?
It was a great buzz when he was announced at halftime that he was coming in. He definitely has all the faithful behind him as well, and there was about 100 kids waiting for signatures off him on the field after as well.
He's their modern hero.
Yeah, no, he is he was on the Burr Twitter and that he's actually like a legend, like, even though he's still playing, like, and you don't really usually say that about guys that are still playing. I still think when push comes to shove, he's gonna be playing. I just don't know I don't think they can afford to be without him. Kingston was very good on the frees. Something that might change this year, and looking at the way Mark Coleman hit the frees from distance, I'd say that's with a view to the future as well. Maybe Horgan was coming out too far to hit some frees. It's Horgan
been undermined, by they've Kingston in taking the frees. He's 2 games in a row he hasn't started. Coleman taking long ones. Is he been undermined, or is he actually just been minded and kept for later on when we actually need it?
I would have said the latter, that he's been minded, and I think, like, for the next decade, they're going to have to find someone that can hit the frees. They're going to have to find someone who's going to stand up. So I just think they're looking at, like, even at near the end of a game, Horgan might, if he does start, he might be gone off. And at least to have Mark Coleman who can pull over frees from 100 yards. At least to have Shane Kingston on now who can hit frees. They have Conor Lahan on. Potentially.
Remember Lahan took them ahead of him about 5 years ago there for a season.
That's right, yeah, that's right. I do still think when push comes to shove that Horgan will play. I would say he's been minded just to make sure that I'd say he'll start the 4th and 5th league games, and he'll be cherry ripe then for Munster Championship.
Cherry ripe. Okay, and just one final word then on Offaly. I see a comment in here which is kind of driving the boat in. It's mob. It's Stephen Loftus. Both Offaly and Laois are on pace to lose their 5 league matches by a combined 100 points each. Like, where are you at with Offaly? I mean, are you fairly down and out about their chances, or do you think, like Westmeath last year, a couple of heavy defeats in the top tier of the league could mean, could kind of set you up and sort of prepare you for what's coming in Joe McDonagh?
Yeah, like, I'm looking at just Westmeath's aggregate of what they conceded last year. They were minus 106 after 5 games. 534 they conceded against Galway, put it up to Waterford. 727 against Cork, 427 against Tipperary. They're big sums, big sums to be defeated by. Flashlight Offaly will win the McDonagh this year. I think that's even aiming high enough. I'd be happy in some respects to get to a McDonagh Cup final this year. Like, Antrim are back down in McDonagh this year. At the moment, you'd have to say Antrim, who were beaten 4 or 5 points by Dublin last weekend, beaten 3 points, was it, by Kilkenny the week before?
6, was
it? It could have been 6, but it was tight anyway. You'd have to say that they're a bit further ahead. I think we need to look at the idea of Group 1A and Group 1B and go back more closer to the Division 1A and Division 1B and have the best 6 in 1A and have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in 1B. And if that means...
Weren't the teams that were in Division 1A saying that, well, we've scalped each other here to get through to the league quarterfinals, and team number 5 and 6 aren't getting through to quarterfinals, whereas teams that are further down the pecking order are. And then also teams that were coming through Division 1B were actually at an advantage. They were winning the league because they could sort of pick and choose which games to target.
Maybe so. But just from that point of view, even if it's Division 1A, the top 4 in Division 1A, 2 of them into semi-finals, 2 of them into quarterfinals, top 2 in Division 1B, only the top 2 now go in and play quarterfinals. And then there's no, like, it's not an incentive to be in 1B then, obviously, because you could potentially miss out on some big games. If you only finish third, then you're not getting a quarterfinal. If you only finish first and second, you might be beaten in a quarterfinal, might miss out in the semi-final and the final. I just think it's a bit like Offaly played Christy Ring last year, and they're playing like 5 of the best teams in the country. Like, whereas if they played Laois, if they played Antrim, you'd fancy them to give them a game anyway, and it'd be very, very competitive.
Yeah, Joe LK20 makes a fair point. Offaly are learning the speed of Tier 1 teams. It takes time. Go back to 4 divisions, 8 teams of 8 in 4 divisions. Stop making changes every couple of years. I kind of agree with that too. We do need to settle at some stage. Right, Tipperary against Kilkenny.
Can I just say, I'm not trying to make changes necessarily. I just don't understand how Offaly, who were ranked about 15 or 16, maybe 13, 14 at the end of last year, are put up in the Group 1A, which is with the All-Ireland champions, the All-Ireland finalists. You've Wexford in there as well, you've Clare in there, and Galway. Like, it looks totally askew to me, that's all.
Yeah, I do agree with that, yeah. Tipperary beat Kilkenny 119 to 118. Like you said, Kilkenny beat Antrim last week. Tipperary had beaten Laois by 4 points. I suppose even in terms of who did the scoring, Jason Ford scored 10 points. Half of those were from place balls. Jake Morris scored 1-2. Barry Heffernan scored a couple. Ronan Maher was very good when he came on for the last 20 minutes for Tipperary. Kilkenny had an awful lot of scorers. Their entire half backlines of Mikey Carey, Niall Brazel and David Blanchfield scored, as did the midfield of Cian Kenny and Paddy Deegan. Pádraig Walsh was their star turn with 4 points from centre forward. I'd imagine he'll be staying there at this point. John Donnelly got 5 points, 4 of those were frees. Tygo Dwyer came on and scored a goal, and Wally Walsh got a couple of points when he came on later on in the game. He actually fouled Cathal Barrett for the winning free that Jason Ford knocked over. Cathal Barrett was man of the match, I'd say, by some distance here. He was really dynamic coming out. But I suppose I'll let you ask me the questions here, because I was the one in Semple Stadium. But yeah, not the greatest game I've ever seen.
Just the first thing I wanted to know after I saw the highlights last night, after Owen Murphy misplaced that puck out for the goal, did he go along with the next 10 puck outs?
Well, it was half time then straight away.
Okay. Did he go along in the second half?
Do you know what? Off the top of my head, I can't remember, and I didn't take those.
You wouldn't. If it had been midway through the first half, you would have noticed Kilkenny are going long now after. But because it was half time, I just thought it was interesting. I wonder, is Brian Cody a very tough one to convert to playing that way? And then when it goes wrong, is he like, Jesus, basically pelt that ball as far as you can now to make sure that doesn't happen again? But it did look like it took a long time to really get to the boil of that game yesterday. It was only in the last 15 or 20 minutes that it really got going.
Like, people in the crowd were really frustrated watching this game throughout the first half. There was, and I know I tweeted it and I said it in the match report video afterwards, there was a sense of enough of this SH1T and just let the ball down the field. But I would say Tipperary are probably doing more of it, working the ball around through the hands in the middle of the field, and sort of a Limerick-esque style than Kilkenny were.
But doesn't it suit Tipperary now, Shane? Doesn't it suit the type of player that they have? And I think that's all you can ask. Like, that suits a Paddy Cadell. They don't have a load of big, huge ball winners in the half-forward line either. I think it suits the type of players that they have.
Yeah, I mean, Paddy Cadell came on towards the end of the game, but yeah, it would, and he came in around the middle of the field. So the players that were probably availing of this mostly were the likes of Dylan Quirk. Now, he hasn't been seen too much in a Tipperary shirt before this. In 2018, he was wing back on the team that won the under-21 All-Ireland. Then, before getting his call up for the senior, he was out of hurling for a year with a heart issue in 2019. Then, the start of 2020, he played corner forward against Watford in the league. I think this was the day that Ozzie Gleeson got the red card. Remember, he was playing centre back and he came with the bat down and he got the red card that day. He scored 4 points and was man of the match. He was brilliant. Then last year in the league, he looked a little bit nervous when he came in the half forward line in a couple of games and wasn't seeing the championship after that. So the Colin Bonner is obviously looking at him as a halfback now. So he came, like, he's very good at getting on the ball. He's good at actually pulling it out of rucks too. Barry Heffernan, I think, is the Rolls Royce of that half-back line for Tipperary. He scored 2 points, but he knits together so many moves, and it's just perpetual motion with him. Seamus Kennedy is kind of the spare man at the back. Michael Breen and Alan Flynn are midfield. I actually think it can be difficult to even get on the ball in this game plan because Tipperary have teething issues. You know, when Limerick work it out, they do sort of a stick pass to the middle of the field. The midfielder will hand pass it on, and you know, someone else will come running through off the shoulder. I don't think Tip have Keane Kenny looks like a good midfielder for Kilkenny. I'm not sure Paddy Deegan is particularly comfortable out in the middle of the field. But anyway, Tipperary are trying to work that ball around. But what I'm saying, and I think this point adds into not necessarily getting the midfielders on the ball enough yet, is they're working the ball around the field. But by the time that they're ready, someone's ready to deliver it, it almost seems like they don't really have any options. Because like Dennis Maher, who's not the paciest in the world, he's quite close to goals. Mark Yo is quite close to goal. But I don't think Tipperary have worked the ball far enough up the field to be delivering it. So, you know, when Limerick work it up, they're almost at midfield by the time they're delivering, and they're maybe at the centre of the pitch. Whereas I think Tipperary were more almost their own 65 and probably out on the flanks, where your options of where you're going to strike are quite limited. You can probably go down the line and that's about it, unless you have someone kind of running off the shoulder. So that's where I think Tipperary have teething issues at the moment and are not quite as far along the line. Now, from Kilkenny point of view, what stood out for them was like the level of class that they had in the past just isn't quite there at the moment. And they do have the Ballyhale lads to come back. You know, so TJ Reid, Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen. Like in Mullen and Owen Cody, you're talking about two players who have the last 3 young hurlers of the year between them. So that would suggest, based on that voting, that there's no better young talent in the country than what Kilkenny have produced. So they have those couple of lads to come in, and we'll see if maybe someone else gets the call up. But I'd say Brian Cody would be alarmed at some of the striking that some of his newer players had.
You don't see this in the highlights. Was that very bad? You just see the best. Obviously, you just see the highlights. These are the lowlights.
Yeah, there was a couple of, and you know what? This was on both teams though. But in the first half, there was something like, I think 40, did I have it written down? 45 shots were taken, and there was 11 mishits between both teams. Now, Kilkenny had 6 and Tipperary had 5, so both had bad ones. Maybe it's just this time of year. Sometimes I wonder about the yellow ball. Is it, you know, is the striking off it quite as good as it was with the previous balls? But then again, maybe that's me just looking for an excuse. But
I thought that with Aaron Gallan's freeze the first day, I have to say, against Wexford as well. That was ball related more so.
There was no goal chance created by either side in the first half. Tipperary scored a goal, like Dennis Maher intercepted that puck out from Owen Murphy, handed it to Jake Morris. He blasted through 2 defenders and then the one-handed sort of bat.
Can I ask you on that? Is he like some sort of underage tennis champion or something? He loves that one-handed slam.
Yeah, and he actually loves doing it even low as well. You ever see him throw it and he sort of bats it on the ground underneath there to pass to somebody.
Very hard to stop because you're so much quick power. It's really quick, like.
Well, like Kilkenny definitely looked like in the first half as if they were struggling with their hurling a little bit, and then, you know, maybe they're changing things up a bit too. But Pádraig Walsh, he was really good at centre forward, very, very dynamic. But other lads were just. Billy Ryan was winning ball out in front. He caught a couple of nice balls over Craig Morgan, and Morgan's looking good for Tipperary, but that's something he'll probably have to work on a little bit in terms of allowing lads to snap ball over him. But if a good ball is played into, it can be very hard for a defender. So there's an element to that too. But Tip were 6 up at half time, and started the second half though. Kilkenny scored 7 of the next 8 points, completely took over, and they had a couple of more chances. Like Tom Phelan had a hooked goal chance at the start of the second half. He had another shot blocked. David Blanchfield, he had a wide. Paddy Deegan had a shot that was mishit that dropped short as well. And even after Tipperary got a point to settle in the 50th minute, Jake Morris scored just after Kilkenny had equalised for the first time, and it made it 113 to 15 points. Even at that stage, Kilkenny had 2 shots that were blocked in a row, which was Deegan by Cadell and Wally Walsh by JK. Who's JK? I just had the initials there. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, it could have been James Quigley. Maybe it wasn't a K. But anyway, the point was that that Kilkenny really took over that game. And it wasn't until Rona Maher came in that Tipperary got a bit of a bounce. And that actually coincided with the crowd being lifted massively, because it really was a dead environment in Thurles, and very different to the sort of environment you expect when you're at a Tipperary against Kilkenny game. A couple of words then for the saves made by the keepers. Brian Hogan made an unbelievable save in the top corner. That was from Richie Lahey. Now, Lahey really should have buried it, and that would have put Kilkenny level again. Then Jake Morris had another goal chance. Now, it had been worked through the hands. Dylan Quirk worked it to Jason Ford, and heading in towards the 21, he fed Jake Morris. Really should have finished it now. But
did Murphy show him the corner?
He
was there. He almost was leaning or something. Good goalkeepers show you where they want you to go.
But like I did that video with Eddie Brennan recently, the Orga Retro series, about finishing goals and giving the eyes and making them think you're going one way and you go the other. And Eddie did it to me, and I was completely sent the wrong way. But he put it where, the side that Owen Murphy holds the hurley with the boss over there, he put it at that side. I mean, you just can't really do that against a goalie like that, especially if you're not going to give him the eyes one way. But it was still a great save from him. And then ultimately, Tygo Dwyer got a goal after a great assist from Billy Ryan. But Tipperary just about got over the line. But Tip missed an awful lot of chances towards the end of the game. Maybe there was still the whole rivalry between Kilkenny and Tipperary kept this game very close. But Kilkenny haven't beat Tipperary in the Championships 2014. It's 3 years now since they beat Tipperary in the league, albeit they haven't really played since then. So it's kind of adding up to those things for Kilkenny, where I just wonder this year, where do you think Kilkenny can go? They're double Leinster champions. That's fine. They have those Ballyhale lads to come back. But I'd say a couple of the players, I was underwhelmed with some of the new lads that they were bringing through.
It definitely looks like they're lacking a bit of class, or the same class that we would have seen throughout the noughties, excuse me, in the early, 2011, 12, 14, 15, definitely looks like they're lacking that kind of class. I think there's a weird kind of air down in Kilkenny just because Henry has gone somewhere else, and a lot of people in Kilkenny think they need change. I'm not sure. I'm not sure even if change at the top is going to mean that they're going to unearth a load of talent. They just don't spring up like mushrooms. So I'm not so sure about that. It's just the fact that they lost, their greatest ever player to a competing county. Do you know what? The more you think of it now, and with Dublin kind of flying and with Wexford flying, 4 into 3 doesn't go in Leinster. 5 into 3 doesn't go in Munster. But Leinster is really and that's not to disregard Laois and Westmeath, but you would think that they're going to be under pressure. And 4 into 3 doesn't go. Here's one for you. If Kilkenny did not get out of Leinster, would that be the end of Brian Cody, regardless?
No, I don't think so, because, right, so the people that are keeping him in the job maintained him in the job for the last number of years. I'm sure a huge amount of Kilkenny wants to keep him there. There are dissenting voices too. We've seen that, more and more in the last year or two. I don't think so, because, he's a Leinster back-to-back champion. He's won more than probably every other manager combined in the history of the county. And I do think that, I don't think Kilkenny would want to insult their greatest ever GAA figure and force him out the door. I couldn't see that. I mean, it's rare that I think somebody has earned the right to walk away whenever they want themselves, but this might be the exception.
Yeah, maybe so. It would definitely be interesting to hear. It'd be worth doing a Vox.
Do you think so? If they didn't get out of Leinster, do you think he'd be gone?
I think, I was going to say there, I think it'd be worth doing a Vox pop down around Kilkenny, talking to people on the ground if that did happen. And obviously you don't know the nature of it, if it could be score different, something like that. I just think, as I said, I think Henry going somewhere else and the fact that they're going to be coming up against each other, it's definitely increased any dissenting voices that are down there. They definitely look like, they're short a couple. There's no point in saying any different. It does look like they're short a couple, and really short, probably a couple of really classy players to age Rowan Murphys and Pádraig Walsh's and TJ Reid's and Adrian Mullins, Owen Cody's. Just looks like they're without a few.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that, but still, it's early enough in the year, and we won't get too carried away just yet. Comments coming in: no All Ireland under 21 since 2008. That's Kilkenny's problem. The Shelminator, Tip and Kilkenny were throwing the sliotar like a rugby ball. Just let it up the yard. Pure constipated hurling. I must have missed that match. Thought Tip only won by a point. Yeah, absolutely. Like Tipperary. The thing is with Tipperary, like I would say, like Kilkenny may get further in the championship than Tipperary this year because Tipperary mightn't get out of Munster. I'd be realistic enough to say that. Like we haven't, and Colin Bonner did say afterwards that he was pleased with the response from his team because I kind of laid out how Kilkenny completely took over the second half of that game and got to a stage where they'd levelled it up. But he did say that there will be changes the next day out. He's kept the same starting team the first two games. James Quigley has acquitted himself very well at full back, but there will be a step up in class in terms, on from here because Laois, for the best will of the world, they do allow you to have extra men back protecting you. It was a terrible day. It's a full-back's day. This game against Kilkenny are shy a little bit of class here. They're shy some of their main kind of attacking threats. So that's why I'm saying there'll be a step up in class when you face some of this other opposition that's coming. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that. Ronan Maher will come into the team. Obviously, he is the captain. He's the main man. I'm surprised we haven't seen Brian McGrath yet. Maybe that's just because he's still working his way back in. But then, after the club run, then again, why name him in the 26 if he's not going to be used? I haven't seen Paddy. Well, we haven't seen much of Paddy Cadell yet. And Robert Byrne, I thought he'd just get a few goals at this point. But maybe he just wanted to, while he's trialing players and giving them that go, maybe he just wanted to keep a bit of a settled team. Maybe he thought it'd be unfair to throw lads in here and just keep changing the team around. Because you know yourself, if you're getting an opportunity in a team, it's good to have it as a settled team. Like you'd ideally like to have the best 14 players plus yourself in there to really settle in.
And no excuses then if you don't cut the mustard, none whatsoever.
Yeah, well, that's it. But I do think that there's a chance that Kilkenny go further in the championship than Tipperary. But I think Tipperary have a little bit more to work with. But just bringing in a new management team and trying to completely alter the way the Tipperary hurl in one season, there's definitely going to be teething issues. Like, as I said, working the ball around, maintaining the ball pretty well a lot of the time. It breaks down at times, but it's just working it around with purpose so that the end product is that you have the ball and someone on the front foot around around the opposition 65 in midfield so that you can then pin a lovely ball inside. And that's why I think it'll take a while for Tipperary yet.
Yeah, it's not going to be perfect early on. I tell you what they did do, and it was, I don't know what Kilkenny were doing, but they managed to find Jason Ford in so much space at times. Like with the Tip attack at the moment, he's the one guy that you probably send someone tracking no matter where he goes, because you just can't afford to give him the space that he had yesterday. He was very good as well. He'd pick off points from anywhere within 90 yards probably from play, left or right, if he's given that sort of latitude that he got yesterday. And Kilkenny put kind of a relative rookie in Niall Brazelin at centre back, which was, he's done it for
the club.
Yeah, he has played there for the club. He would
have club.
Yeah, he would have traditionally played maybe more in the forwards up until recent years. Before definitely drifted around, and it didn't look like a case of that he was being passed on to anybody else. Far from it. From a Tip point of view, there's definitely going to be a little bit of annoyance and some teething problems, as you say. A ball is going to break down when it's total systematic change, you'd imagine. But as I said, I think with the players that they have at their disposal, that's the type of game that would suit them a lot better. They don't have a load of outballs on the wings or at centre forward. They don't have a load of ball winners. So you need to look at changing the way you play, and it definitely looks like they're doing that.
Yeah, Stephen Loftus saying, summed up by Barrett pucking it out for 65 because he hadn't a clue what to do. Well, no, I mean, he was just trying to work the ball back to Brian Hogan. But God, if that had ended up in the net, to be serious egg in your face. Lads, are you stone mad writing off Hoggy? It's February and Cork are looking after a prize player. We definitely are not writing him off. We're just saying that maybe there's signs there that they're looking at other options. And who knows if those other options perform really well, really quickly. Does that guarantee him starting? Mark Keogh was poor yesterday. Kilkenny a lot of wides. Barrett, Quigley, Moore and solid. And it was probably worse in person, Joe Butler. Obviously, a debate about the quality of the game yesterday. Shane was saying in his post-match reaction, the crowd were very annoyed. They definitely were. They definitely weren't loving what we saw in that game yesterday. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But there's been such huge change in Tipperary since the 2019 All-Ireland. There was just 12 of the 30 starters. 12 remained of the 30 players who started the 2019 All-Ireland. You will have a couple more coming back from Kilkenny. But these are completely different teams. They're playing a different style. And the Tipperary Kilkenny games of 10 years ago, I think they're probably gone at this point. Dublin beat Antrim 2-19 to 2-15. Teams were level at halftime, 1-8 apiece. Harsh penalty call on Ronan Hayes, but
Definitely. That was definitely harsh.
Yeah, sorry, I said Tipperary, but I was thinking Tipperary manager Darren Gleeson not happy with moral victories there. For Dublin, I mean, obviously it's very sad for Matty Kenny. His mother Annie passed away over the weekend, and condolences to him and his family. But the team obviously soldiered on and played the game and got through. And I think it's important that they're continuing to win games and not lose games. They haven't lost this year, even if they're not performing incredibly well in this one. Like, I mean, when you consider last year, the Leinster Championship, they absolutely spanked Antrim. You know, it's just nice to keep the winning run going.
Yeah, and as well as that, Antrim's 3 games in Corrigan Park last year was a win against Clare, a draw against Wexford, and a win against Laois. So, like, it is, like, I know it's maybe a cliche, but it is obviously a tough enough place to go. Quite, hostile enough. Big crowd. I wouldn't imagine there were too many dubs up there, so it'd be fairly kind of partisan support. So, and there was plenty of turbulence during the game, but they were able to get through it. Eamon Dillon was brilliant when he came off the bench, got a lovely point, and he played a lovely ball across the goal for Paul Crummy. I remember playing against Wexford years ago, and it's something that Gizzy Ling and Rory Jacob used to do a lot of. Just fire a ball across the 6-yard area, and all you need is even the faintest touch and it's in the back of the net because the keeper doesn't have any time to react. And Paul Crummy ended up on the end of that yesterday. Danny Sutcliffe came good with a couple of big plays as well. The penalty was a lucky enough decision in my view. A very good finish obviously from Donald Burke, nice and low. On the other end then, Antrim for the second week in a row, very, very competitive, but as Darren Gleeson said, like, they come away. Yeah, they were competitive, but they come away and still have zero points after 2 games. And he just said, we're not here for performance or positives. We're here for points. And it's interesting because most of the time managers say they're all about performance. So, in fairness, very honest of him. And he just said, in this game, you're judged on points. We're after having 2 really good performances, but we've got nothing for it. And the thing about that is, if they'd gotten a draw or a win, the pressure is a little less when you go and play Laois in that game, basically to avoid a relegation playoff. If you have drawn with somebody else, we'd say going into that, all you need is a draw to make sure you're safe. So it looks like that game, everything is going to be on the line in that game. Definitely signs, and I'm not being patronising at all, but definitely signs that things are, still on a good graph for Antrim, despite having a poor championship last year and getting relegated back to the McDonagh. Like, the 2 league performances so far have been quite good and lots of positives to take from them. But as Darren says, no points, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep an eye on them again next week or the weekend after next. Waterford, the manner of their hammering of Laois, I think we all kind of sighed when we saw that, like 731 to 19 points. So 52 points to 19, like 33-point defeat. That is an absolute hammering. Stephen Bennett scored 2 penalties. That's 4 penalties he's scored in the space of 2 weeks, which is fair going.
They should have let Kieran come up and take them, as you said on the show. All 3 Bennetts would have had 2 penalties apiece within a week.
Yeah, I mean, but I suppose the biggest thing that Watford will take from this game is that Tadhg de Burca was back at number 6, his first start since the All-Ireland of 2020. And then actually Ben Conroy, he was one of the 2 players that got sent off for Laois. He got sent off against Tipperary also, but it was a mistaken identity. So instead, Paddy Purcell was sent off. But I suppose, like, what do you really say about an annihilation like that? Only point to the positive for Watford, which is they've another victory and Tadhg de Burca's back.
Yeah, and they looked. Did you have a comment in there that said when Billy Power came in and attack, it kind of changed around Waterford's attack completely? I think he came in early enough for Mikey Kiley, and he was a key kind of player. But just looking back at a couple of the goals last night, it looked like once they got Laois in the back foot, they were just running through a kind of an empty defence. Shane Power, just his comment, he said Liam Cattle didn't mess around yesterday anyway. Took off Michael Kiley after 20 minutes. On came Billy Power, and he just changed the game completely, especially for the last 15 minutes of the first half. And the game was totally over at half time. Again, it's a huge weekend for Waterford. Huge performance there, clocking 50 points. And you have to, from a Laois point of view, you have to look back. I think the last time they conceded 50 points was when Cork hit 20 on them in the qualifier. Remember that famous qualifier years ago? So, like, Laois looked like they were they were decent against Tipperary the first
And they
time out.
were. They were.
I don't think I didn't see. I'm looking forward to looking back at a bit more of this game, but hugely, you'd have to say hugely worrying from a Laois point of view that they were cut open at will like that.
Yeah, 12 different scores for Watford. Bennett with 3-8, 2 penalties and 6 frees. Patrick Kern with 1-7. Kieran Kerwin 1-4. Asta Gleeson 1-3. Karthik Daly 1-1. Tom Barron 2 points. And then a slew of other lads got a point each. They really do have an awful lot going for them in terms of kicking on this season. When those Ballygunner lads come back in, if they can be pulled out of the pub at all in the next week or two, God, they really do have a lot going for them. Actually, and it's fallen nicely that the Ballygunner lads, nobody's going to be rushed back for this weekend because there's no game to play, so they can fully enjoy it, relax, and kick on.
It's ideal, isn't it? I'm all about getting to celebrate properly. Like it's brilliant.
But in Division 2A, the Naas players who won the All-Ireland last week, a lot of them were rushed back by David Herity for, well, I'm sure that the players wanted to. I'm sure he didn't have a gun to their head or anything. But in Division 2A, Kildare started really well against Kerry, but really faded out of this and lost by 4-18 to 2-16 for a finish.
Yeah, they conceded 2-7 and only scored 2 points, I think, for the last 25 minutes. So, maybe that's a lot to do with the likes of Brian Byrne and Jack Sheridan and James Burke, Simon Lacey and these lads. Just the exertions of Croke Park last week and even the celebrations around the All-Ireland. But Shane Conway was hugely influential. He hit 1-3 from play. Pádraig Boyle hit 5 points from play as well. Just a good win for Kerry after being beaten the first week. A brilliant win for Down as well. Away to Meath. That's 2 wins in a row for them. Finished 2-18 to 1-19. They're in a great position to be promoted. And it's kind of funny. It's not funny really. It's just peculiar that they were beaten in the ring final with 6 points by Kildare in 2020. But they finished, they were in a nicer group maybe of the McDonagh, managed to retain their status, whereas Kildare got relegated. Kildare are, 0-2 in this year's league, and Down are 2-0. So they're in a really good position, especially with the other result in the group with Westmeath being beaten fairly comprehensively by Carlow. I couldn't have seen this one coming. Marty Kavanagh went off after 11 minutes for IT Carlow during the week. And you're just thinking, Carlow, without their main man, albeit on home soil, they're going to struggle against the Westmeath side that played Division 1 last year and won the McDonagh. But Kevin McDonald was brilliant. He hit 1-6, I think, 3 from frees. And Chris Nolan hit another 3 points, his Mount Leinster Rangers teammate.
Yeah, I think John Nolan was out of that game. And also for Carlow, just bouncing back from that defeat against Down last week, they were bitterly disappointed with that. Horrendous conditions. I suppose for the vast majority of games this weekend, the conditions were an awful lot better than last weekend. I was listening to some of this Carlow-Westmeath game on KCLR FM, and it seemed that Carlow were in charge and playing the better stuff throughout the period that I was listening. But you'd have to say, if you're Westmeath going into the Leinster Championship this year and you're not exactly flying at the moment here, it doesn't bode well. You'd be a little bit fearful for Joe Fortune's team.
Yeah, you'd want to be pulling up trees in 2A, in fairness, when you're going into the Leinster Championship. They've no margin for error really now. They need to bounce back and need to win their next 3. They need to win their next 3 games really to finish in that top 2. Anything else wouldn't be good enough for them going into a Leinster Championship. Just looking at a couple of the other games then in 2B, a good win for London against Mayo, 4-11 to 110. So this is London's first win in a competitive game in 2 years, because they hadn't played in the guts of about 2 years. So a big win for them, having been well beaten by Donegal the week before. It probably comes with the caveat that there was no Keith Higgins or Cottle Freeman for Mayo. And a Derry won for the second week in a row. They put up a huge score against Wicklow. It was 224 to 12 points. That's a really poor result for Wicklow, and they're struggling big time. I know they struggled last year, and Offaly gave them an awful beating in the Christy Ring Cup, but they're going through a transition phase at the moment, and I think it's going to take a couple of years. I had chatting to a fella last night, and he just said the lack of direction at underages in recent years is coming home to roost at senior level. Ushie McKeever fired 1-3 for Derry. And a cracker of a game up in Markovich Park. Donegal made it 2 from 2. They beat Sligo 119 to 214. Ronan McDermott with 1-4, and Davin Flynn, Ross Gray native, I think he played. It was a bit of an underage sensation. He had 6 points, 2 from frees as well. Just fly through 3A then. Huge result for Tyrone, 429 to 7 points. They beat Warwickshire. Roscommon beat Louth 221-14. Armagh, comprehensive defeat of Monaghan 422-13 points. And down in 3B, good win for Lancashire after being beaten the first week out. They beat Cavan 23 points to 12. That was up in Kingspan Breffni. And Longford were beaten by 2 points by Fermanagh. It was Fermanagh 110, Longford 11 points. So plenty going on in the lower tiers there as well. Probably the results that stand out, probably a good win for Donegal. They're in a good position. And Down in particular in 2A, they're flying high.
I have to say, I couldn't quite believe it when Kilcoo scored that winning goal the other day. You could see what they were trying to do. They were trying to shepherd Kilmacud Crokes into the corner out at the Hogan stand side and try and force that turnover that they needed at the end of the game. 2 points down. It was 1-8 to 13 points. Similar enough scenario between Ballygunner and Ballyhale. Ball gets fed back to Conor Ferris. Now, obviously, the goalkeeper, he's out from his goal and he's trying to give an option to his defender because the one thing they can't afford to do is get turned over. But as soon as the ball comes to him, he realises I'm in bother and I have to blast it down the field. And he did just that. But fair enough, the goal comes off that because there's a neat little pass. Just trying to double check who gave the ball in. I can't remember who hit the kick pass. Anyway, it was probably one of the Brannigans. There's enough of them out there. Gave the pass into Sheelan Johnson. He turned, took on his man, kicked the ball across to Ryan Johnson. His shot is saved. And Jerome Johnson knocks it into the net for the winning goal. But I certainly wouldn't be blaming Conor Ferris for this. Now, some people mightn't be, too happy with the idea of a goalkeeper being really far out from the goals. But the ball went all the way to midfield. You still have 14 other players on the field that can stop this happening, and they didn't manage to stop it. So it's not on him. And Robbie Brennan was talking about it afterwards. Now I just kind of give his quotes in terms of like the overall thing, and then relating to the goalkeeper. He says it's gut wrenching. It's not quite like 2018 again. That was when they lost to Molyneux. Obviously a good game to watch. I'm not sure what it was like as a spectacle, but it's probably hard to lose it in those terms at the very end. But fair play to Kilcoo for sticking at it. They never gave up. They pushed up an awful lot more than they had been. They seemed reluctant enough at times to really go at it, and I think they did it a little bit more in the second half, which put us under a little bit more pressure. And yet, minus the goal, I still think we probably would have got the job done. But that's nothing to do with Conor Ferris. Conor has been magnificent for us all year. As I said to him on the pitch, he was in tears, but he's the reason we are here because he has had a fantastic season. That's it. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Like it's so rough on a guy like that. I'm sure Conor is going to be hard on himself over the next while for that, but you certainly couldn't put it down to him alone because so many other lads had a very good opportunity to get back, to even sort of, it's horrible enough, but, drag down Sheelan Johnson, drag down whoever, anything bar a goal.
Yeah, it's funny, the whole cynical part of it, and maybe you don't like to see it, but if you're from either the clubs or either the counties involved, you are probably begging them just to pull someone down, take the opportunity away. You potentially could say the same for Ballyhale. Why don't you just run out and leave Harry Ruddle on his arse if you have to, just to make sure there's a free and they have to score from 30 yards. It has to be even more of a wonder goal than he scored. But I definitely wouldn't be placing blame with the keeper anyway. I tell you something about Robbie Brennan too. I couldn't believe how calm he was keeping. Did you see him sitting? You couldn't see it from the stadium. I was watching it on the TV. He was just sitting back in against the seats. It was almost Jim Gavin-esque. He looked totally detached and he was just leaving it to his players. I couldn't believe it. And he was still like that when they scored the goal. But it just... The quality was poor at times. It definitely wasn't the best spectacle. But when it gets tight and you're in extra time or anything like that, it's just the drama just ramps up. It was some finale to it. And some way for Kilcoo to get over the line and some way for Mickey Moran to get his All-Ireland club title was unbelievable.
Because Kilcoo just seemed a non-performance for so long. First half down 8-2. I think it went to 9-2. Like some of the chances they missed in the first half, I couldn't believe. Like Paul Devlin, such a brilliant kicker of the ball, couldn't believe some of the chances he missed. Conor Laverty had a one-on-one with the keeper, and Conor Ferris made a great save. Again, it's not down to just the goalkeeper. The midfielder, is it Dylan Ward? I'm just after forgetting his first name. I think it's Dylan Ward, the midfielder. He had a couple of wides that you wouldn't expect him to get, and everything just seemed to be going to pot. And so, yeah, it is Dylan Ward. And then just sometimes, just a bit of luck gets you back into the game. When that 45 was just knocked to the net by a Crokes defender, it just gave them that shot of life because it just wasn't there beforehand. I just could you see a way that Kilcoo were going to come back after the way that they were shooting themselves in the foot?
No, you couldn't see it really. It needed something like that, some sort of a stroke of luck, something not necessarily bizarre, but something like that for it to happen, because it just didn't look like it was going to happen otherwise.
Yeah. So from Mickey Moran's point of view, Mickey Moran's point of view, did you see that video of him kissing the ground?
It's brilliant. Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, because he's such a quiet man, like, and even I'd say like he'd no choice than to go up and accept the trophy with the two lads, and I'd say he wanted to be anywhere but front and center. No, I love that video of him just walking down slowly. I don't really like phones and videos, and everything is videoed nowadays, and everything is photoed, and I wouldn't be a big fan of that. I wouldn't do it myself at all, but he's delighted that somebody was standing up there with that video just to see, just so you could actually see it, like, and see him get down on his knees. Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah, fairness. Just a real, like, he's done some body of work coaching and managing down through the years, and just to get the All-Ireland club title after heartbreak with Schlockneil and heartbreak a couple of years ago, Kilcoo. No one has deserved it more than him. Did you see that picture as well that Conor Laverty had of his two kids sleeping facing opposite directions in the bed with the Andy Merrigan cup in the middle of them, and the Kilcoo quilt covers and everything? Yeah, there's no fear of them boys. They'll be playing with the Kilcoo seniors in a couple of years, no doubt.
Yeah, very different to the photo that a certain Knockmore footballer had of their cup title win a couple of years ago. I'm not going to expand on that, but I think plenty of people know what I'm talking about there.
You'll have to send that to me after.
Yeah, no, I won't be sending it on. But yeah, like a lot of near misses for Mickey Moore. The All-Ireland final in 2006 with Mayo, like you said, Schlockneil 15 and 17, and Kilcoo a couple of years ago. And that was a loss after extra time. They didn't score in extra time. But interesting, I think it was one of the articles on the 42, Kevin O'Brien or Finton O'Toole, I can't remember who. But they've been the kings of extra time since that Cara Finn experience. Like the quarter-final in Down this year against Carryduff, the Ulster semi-final against Glen, the All-Ireland semi-final against Finbars. They're kind of ready for no matter what you throw at them. But also you can't ignore that for Crokes. Craig Diaz had to go off with cramp, and he was a huge loss because he had been so good in that game. So congratulations to them. And then I think you just wanted to have a quick word on the Ashburn Cup.
Yeah, no, just, and I probably it got lots of headlines locally. DCU won their first ever Ashburn Cup over the weekend, and Kate Kenny, who was player of the match when Rhinus won the All-Ireland Intermediate Camogie final, she starred for them. They beat Dublin rivals UCD 114 to 5 points at the weekend, and Kate Kenny has an All-Ireland intermediate semi-final this weekend, which is a repeat of last year's final against Galtier this weekend. So they're 2 steps away from winning 2 All-Irelands in the space of a couple of months, and she's obviously won another All-Ireland there with her college. Yeah, really special talent.
Yeah, who would be your goat of the week? I think you have to give it to Harry Ruddle, don't you? And Jerome Johnson. I mean, there's nobody else to even look at. Maybe you want to give it to Kay Kenny?
No, Kay Kenny's achievements are massive, but yeah, this is the Harry and Jerome show today, in fairness. It's pity his name wasn't Robson Huddle, and then it'd be Robson and Jerome, but sure, listen, what can you do?
We can't have everything. A reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame, you get 15% off. Huge amount of jerseys, including the ones that are on screen and including the ones that we're wearing just here. That's it from the show. We'll be back again on Thursday. As I said, patreon.com/OurGame. That's the only way you'll see the full live show. That'll be coming at 1 o'clock on Thursday. I had to sign it up for my father yesterday. It took about 35 seconds to sign up. If you know your name, if you know your address, if you know your email, and if you put your bank details in, that's all you have to do. And it works out at about 50 cents a podcast over the course of the year. And we'll see you on Thursday, patreon.com/OurGame. Great stuff, Michael Verney. We'll be chatting to you again.
Cheers, Shane.